Good evening, members, and welcome to tonight's Health and Adult Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do we have apologies for absence, please? Councillor Kemp? Use your mic, please, Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have apologies from Mr. Barrett, Roger Barrett, who is unwell. He telephoned me late this morning.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, Councillor Kemp. Thank you. Councillor Perfect?
Yeah, I am substituting for Councillor Wildy, who sends his apologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Perfect. Can I also sign the record of the meeting held on the 16th of January as correct, please, members? Is that agreed? Thank you. I have no urgent business to announce. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests or any declarations of whipping this evening, members? Take that as a no. Okay. And before we get going on tonight's meeting, I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome newly elected Councillor David Finch to the committee. Welcome, Councillor Finch. I hope you'll find it very interesting. You'll see some of the good stuff that's done by everyone throughout Medway, all different stakeholders and our voluntary sector, etc. So I hope you find it really interesting, and please reach out to officers and to us if you need any support going forward. And we try and keep the acronyms. Councillor Crozier will certainly help you with the acronyms, so don't worry about that. Okay. Members, I would also just like us to hold a minute of reflection, as it's been 5 years since the start of the COVID pandemic. As you know, we lost over 1,100 residents in Medway, and I would also like to hold a minute of reflection just to recognise the immense work done by all of our stakeholders and our charities and residents across the Medway towns. Thank you, members. And also, just to let you members know that item 8 is being deferred to the next meeting. There are some aspects in the report that needed clarification, and in fact it's more beneficial for the committee to consider this project along with a fuller report from Kindy about the wider assistive technology work and other innovation provided. And as always, can I remind all speakers to keep their introductions as short as possible. Members have read the papers, so please use the introduction to update members on anything not included in your report or to draw attention to the very key points. Okay, and we're going straight to item 5, which is the update on adult autism and the ADHD pathway development.
Good evening all. I don't have anything to add to the papers, so I'm happy to take questions at this point if that's helpful.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rory. Any questions from members about the ADHD pathway? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to start off. I mean, it's an interesting report, and this is close to my heart as I'm sitting there waiting for an ADHD diagnosis as we're sitting here. Diagnosis, even with it being put forward that I might have it, has really changed my life. So it's very interesting. But I've got a resident that came to me at my last ward meeting in Strood and informed me that her GP made a referral 2 years ago just for a medicine review, and she's still waiting. And she just feels that she's lost in the system somewhere. And I really hope going forward with this that, you know, people are not getting lost in the system. Because I feel like she said to me, I don't know where I am in the system. It's just like a waiting list. I don't know if I'm number 42 or 3,000, You know, she has no idea. It's just this stock thing for the waiting list. And then going on from that, I still find it really hard to comprehend, I suppose, that we're doing ADHD and autism pathway, but FASD is still not put in with this neurodivergent, because I don't know anybody who's got FASD that doesn't have a diagnosis of ADHD and autism, if not both of them. And ADHD and autism can be a secondary to FASD. So I feel like we're missing a trick here, because I know of at least 3 families in Medway that have had an autism diagnosis and are now back in the system waiting to have an FASD diagnosis. Now, it would seem better for me to add FASD to this, then we can rule out FASD, and then we can go on to the ADHD and autism diagnosis. The other reason for this is, if it's FASD that's causing the autism, and I'm not a doctor, but if it's FASD causing autism or ADHD, the nuances can be different. I know that medication can have different, because it's the damage is being caused, it's not organic with normal ADHD and autism. It's something that's caused it, so it can cause difference, which is still then not helping the people. If they just have an ADHD diagnosis, they need the extra diagnosis of the FASD to give them the full support package. And we all know that, you know, it's just not about medication, it's about giving full support to these people. So I just really want to stress, I really think FASD needs to be added to this neurodivergent, because you're missing a whole big piece of the jigsaw puzzle without putting it there. And it is the primary diagnosis that ADHD and autism sit under if it's caused by FASD. If that makes sense. And also, if you do that, then there's 428 conditions linked with FASD. We could be really helping these children on their, these adults and these children on their journey. But that's all I wanted to say, really.
Councillor Jackson, before Marie answers, just do the acronym. I know you're going to know it straight up. Can you just, for new members as well, please? Yeah,
it's fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And also, I checked the figures before I came out. Autism prevalence on from the Autism Society and from the World Health Organization is 1%. FASD from the Salford prevalence study was 2 to 4%. So that means FASD prevalence could be double or even quadruple what autism diagnoses are. It really needs to be linked in this. We're sort of wasting money, because we're then going back and diagnosing afterwards, where it could be the first one and ruled out.
Thank you, and I do appreciate your thoughts and feedback. We have taken, because we talked about this when I came last time, and we have taken that on board in the children's transformation piece of work. That's the space that we've been focusing on in terms of making sure FASD is included in our neurodevelopmental pathways. So there's some work happening around that, and I can talk with you perhaps about how that we might draw you into that space with us in terms of your knowledge and experience as well going forward. In terms of the adult space, at the moment, the challenges with the demand for ADHD and autism are significant. So adding another group into that space at the moment, I don't think would benefit those individuals. I hear what you're saying about the cost effectiveness, but we have to try and deal with the challenges we've currently got with the waiting list for autism assessments and ADHD assessments. I do hear what you're saying about fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, but at the moment we don't have those expertise within the services that we've currently commissioned, so we would have to build those in. It's not that I'm unwilling to do that, it's just at the moment I need to deal with the immediate challenge and the weights that are there for individuals. And I do hear about the statistics, but the 1% of the population is an underestimation in terms of autism. We know that, so it doesn't reflect the true demand that we've currently got. So not wanting to dismiss or undermine what you're asking, I just, at the moment, that would be a challenge in the adult pathway, but we have absolutely heard that and are taking that through in the children's transformation piece of work.
Can I just come back quickly?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing on that is, and I understand that you've got stress on ADHD, but if people are getting diagnosed with ADHD and they're walking away thinking they have ADHD, but their ADHD is secondary to their FASD, you're not then giving them a full diagnosis, and they could go away with a misdiagnosis that I'm trying to diminish your workload rather than give you more work, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And I do think it's something that perhaps we want to take out of this space and look at together in other spaces. I would really value having your input into that, so thank you for that.
That'd be really good. Thank you very much. Councillor Hamadishe.
Thank you very much. I just want to say, first of all, the 2 videos that we watched prior to this session were very useful for setting the scene in terms of the lived experience, the journey with 2 individuals that have a diagnosis of ADHD. Very, very useful. My 2 questions really pertain to this assessment backlog that we have and the dangers, potential dangers, or your view on it, where people are so desperate for the diagnosis and they cannot wait for the NHS to provide them that assessment, and they go to the private sector for it. Is there a danger, one, that we're creating a cottage industry of just assessments done in the private sector because people are so desperate to find meaning for their experiences? And the second one is about meeting people where they are. If you take a look at some of the survey questions, people are very interested in different access points, different touch points to receiving help. And what are you actually doing or considering doing now to increase those touch points? I'm talking about now great awareness in schools, in employment situations, sports, just so that you can, and in doing so, you are going to raise demand, because I'm sure as we watch the video, most people said, oh, I'm a bit like that, I'm a bit like that, but it's nuanced. And the challenge we have is, particularly mental health, is the due diagnosis nature of ADHD and autism. If it's not treated effectively, depression, anxiety kicks in, and then trying to decipher which is the primary concern becomes a challenge. So that's my ramble, but in there were 2 questions, I can assure you of that. Thank you.
Thank you. So the impact of the long waits in the NHS absolutely have an impact for people. We recognise that, which is why we've tried to ensure that we prioritise clinically and based on need, so those individuals who have the greatest need get to the top of that wait as quickly as we can make it happen. It does have an impact on people choosing to go privately. We know that. People have shared that. One of the experiences on the video was that. The risks around the types of provision out there that people might access, either through the private route or right to choose, is a consideration that we've been looking at in terms of assuring ourselves of the quality of the providers that we have available to people in Kent and Medway, and that's why we've undertaken the accreditation process that we're currently doing. So many of the providers who work with us through the right to choose provision are also providing services in a private capacity to patients, to people. So it's making sure that we are assured that when we use those services from an NHS perspective, that their quality and processes are guaranteed. So that's the accreditation process that we've been taking, but we can't offset necessarily if people choose to go through a private route what quality of experience they get, because we don't have oversight of that from an NHS perspective. But obviously, we're trying to make sure that they have the best outcomes through the NHS pathways that we've got available to us. Your second question was the touch points in terms of people's access to sport, and that was very much why we carried out the survey and the workshops that we've done over the last few months to get that understanding of what works for people, recognizing that people like to have access to support in different ways and trying to maximize doing that in a variety of different ways. So we're building on that engagement piece of work, and we're now in the process of building our procurement requirements around the support that people have shared with us that they would like to have access to, and maximizing the diversity of that offer for people across Kent and Medway in the coming months.
Can I just come back quickly? No, thank you for that. Just regarding the first point about the accredited services that you have, can you give some sort of assurances that those accredited bodies go through the same rigorous process for validation, for ensuring the quality of service mirrors and matches the NHS? Thank you.
Yes, I can assure you of that. They go through the same accreditation process.
Okay, Marie, I have no other members. Councillor Crozier.
I was just going to wait for other people to speak before I spoke. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for Marie for your report. Chair, I attended one of the meetings that you held, and I found it very, very informative. And just as a comment, and I've made this comment to Marie about the two ladies that were on the film. Although they were very informative, for me, having been to the meeting and spoken to those people individually and getting the experience of what ADHD was to them, didn't come across on the film. And I think that would be useful for members if they don't know what ADHD is, or think it's something that it's not. Would be great to attend one of those meetings and see what that is. We learned at the meeting, and also it's in the report, that there's been a 600% increase in ADHD since COVID. I think I'm right in saying that. And that seemed to be kind of counterproductive from what was being said, that when you're in an environment where there are lots of people, that's when you get confused and you get distracted, whereas at home you perhaps can concentrate. And I don't know whether you've got a comment about that. And I was also horrified to learn that there were 13,000 adults waiting for assessment in Kent and Medway. I believe I've got that right. And that once they've been assessed, there is no support out there whatsoever for it, really, other than the medication. And then, like they said on the film, there's just nothing really there for them. So really, just to comment on the why you think it's the 600% increase since COVID.
So I think it's helpful to share that ADHD and autism, neurodiversity, is a complex and multifaceted presentation. So one person's experience will be different to another person's experience. So it is important to recognize and understand that people will have different needs depending on the impact of their neurodiversity. Why we've seen an increase since COVID? Because people have become more aware of those particular aspects of presentation. They may have been masking or coping for a period of time, and COVID enabled them to step away from those experiences that caused them challenge or concern, and then and they were able to reflect that perhaps that's why they were struggling. There was also an increase, I would suggest, in public awareness of ADHD, particularly through social media during that period of time, and that's also played a factor in the increase in demand. So yes, we've seen a 600% increase, and it's been growing ever since. So the services we've commissioned, we're not expecting or anticipating that increase, nor were we as commissioners, which is why we have struggled to meet that demand with the commissioned services we have available, which is why we have a long waiting list for assessment.
So the increase has been a good and a bad thing. It's been good that you've now identified more people who've got ADHD, but it's made the problem worse.
Exactly, public knowledge, and I think the point earlier about actually once you start to reflect something back to people, then people start to reflect whether that's actually something they may have experience of or others have experience of. So demand increases just by the fact that people have more knowledge and understanding. So, and I agree, having 13,000 people on a wait list is not what we want to have happen, and we're working to reduce that and to meet the needs of people in as timely a manner as we can, particularly in terms of clinical needs. Medication reviews is the priority for us. If somebody's already receiving medication, it's really important their care is continued and not interrupted. So that's where we've been focusing our resources, and we will be building on ensuring that people have access to support going forward. Again, your point about there not being much support at the moment, we recognise that, which is why we've been working with people with lived experience to understand what support would benefit them, rather than commissioning something without that knowledge and understanding, because at the moment it's working with people to understand what's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. Councillor Perfect.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Marie, for your report. My question just sort of follows on from what Councillor Crozier has just been saying there. I'm just interested in terms of the funding piece around all of this, since obviously we've had this significant increase, and I was reading some of the materials online that there's been recently, a lot of coverage around this in the FT and other places. I'm just interested what NHS England and what the Department for Health and Social Care are doing in order to provide you with additional resourcing at a top level. I appreciate some of this review sort of feeds into that, but you know, there's been a significant increase since 2019, and I'm assuming funding in this area hasn't gone up by 650%. So I'd just be interested to know how you're finding the resourcing and what activity, the engagement there's been with government on that. Thank you.
So NHS England have stepped up a task force looking at ADHD in particular, so looking at some of the root causes as to why that increase in demand has occurred, and how best to address it. Funding has not followed demand, so we have not received additional funding to meet that demand at an ICB level. So we're using the resources we have available to us at the moment, which is why there are gaps in provision. So yeah, the funding is a challenge for us, and we're having to work within the means that we have available and try and maximise that for people at this point.
Over to you. Just Health Watch representative.
Hello. Firstly, I just want to say I attended one of the engagement events, and actually it was amazing to see a real effort to engage and get the solutions actually from people using services. But my question is around employment support. So one of the questions that people answered was what matters to them, what support services matters to them. And 41% mentioned employment support, which is accessing and remaining in employment. So I'm aware that there is employment or employer strategy being drafted in Medway as well. Are you linked in these two strategies? Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's one of the key areas that we're focusing on at the moment in terms of ensuring people have the support to get into work, but also to remain in work. Not just people with ADHD, but people with learning disabilities and autistic people as well. So we're very much part of those conversations.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask you, Marie, look, we put you into substantial variation, and we did say light touch, and I must say, I think that was right to do, because you've been very thorough, and I will touch on a couple of elements of it, but you know, the pathway, from what Councillor Crozier said, I have no doubt that you're, you know, going out speaking to service users was good, and you've done it in the right way. I can see that from the report, so I'd like to thank you for that. I suppose the Councillor Hamadishi sort of asked the question, because I was worried about all loads of these different providers popping up, you know, grabbing a bit of money, popping up and saying we can do these assessments and we don't know who they are, and just appearing under different company names. Are we certain, that's the first one, are we certain that the you know, the safeguards, the accreditation, everything will be in place to stop those rogue assessment organisations popping up and taking advantage of our residents? So are we positive of that?
So under the new procurement regulations that came in earlier this last year, this pathway is aligned with right to choose. So any provider who wishes to provide right to choose for patients in this clinical area will need to be commissioned or contracted with a ICB across in England. We've been working in Kent and Medway, NHS Kent and Medway, to have our own accreditation process in place, which is now there, and providers are going through that accreditation. So those who want to be contracted with us directly, so they either use that contractual arrangement or they use the contractual arrangement they have with other ICBs nationally. So that gives us a level of assurance. However, we do recognise that there are still many organisations out there who, yes, potentially have stepped into this space because of the business opportunities. So we need to continue to work at a national and local level to address that.
It's brilliant. And just from I suppose, it must be a bit soul destroying because I know you're so passionate about helping our residents with this, and I'm sure every member can see that, and we've seen that from the first time you've come here as well. This new pathway, the reality is, as Councillor Crozier and others have said, it's not going to straight away reduce this waiting list, is it? We are still leaving people behind. And I'm not blaming you, Marie, for that. We are still, but I think it has to be heard from a national level. We are still going to be leaving a lot of people behind, or even undiagnosed, just sitting with no support and no help at all. I'm correct in that.
Yes, I'm very aware that it isn't going to resolve the challenges that we've got. And I think some of the challenges have meant that it's remaining as more fragmented than I would have liked it to be when I first came and talked about this some time ago. However, there is appetite and desire within the Kent and Medway system, both from people with lived experience to really harness the change that we can, and also from across health and social care. So I do feel that there are things we can do and will make a difference and make things better for a greater number of people. However, I do recognise that it will take us some time to address that backlog of individuals waiting.
Thanks, Maria. Leanne, I don't know if you or Jackie would like to answer about how we support our staff. If we've got staff members that are struggling with, non-diagnosis, or what support we give our staff members.
Thank you. So this has been something in the last year or so that we've been taking really seriously across the council, and training is now given to our managers to support people who are struggling with being at work, with ADHD and autism. That's been spread out more broadly. That then means actually for some of the challenges that we have seen in the past, and I've seen this and experienced this, where people have been taken down a capability route because they're struggling, not recognising that actually that's because of the neurodiverse needs. So as a local authority, it's been taken very seriously.
Well, thank you, Mary. We will look forward to updates. I'll go to the Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the report.
Seconded. Thank you. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Can we call the Ambulance Trust members up, please, to the table? Lawrence, you can move along one if you want to. You can sit where you want, really, but you are allowed to move along. It's okay. If Matt's not here, it's fine. Okay.
So we have apologies from Matt Webb. He's stuck in an accident on the M25, right. So we'll hopefully be here shortly.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Can I just start by saying, Darryl and Lawrence, we are strong supporters of the ambulance service here. I've just got a little gripe I have to make, just a little one, which is unusual for me, although Lawrence will think it's not unusual, but it is. We may have to revisit the report at some point, Darryl, because the report, I know other members have commented on it. We might ask for a summary report in the future. All the information in there was correct, it was good, but it was almost like a board report, and we had to search through it to get the different points. So for members, they sort of tend to like to look at more Medway-focused stuff, but also highlighting the board changes, then just doing a bit of a paragraph would be good. And just a slight reminder, although our Democratic Services team will never complain or moan, but we do have to get the reports in on a timely basis for them to be able to, because they can also help you change it as well, so it's good. But I'm sure everyone has, I think someone's coming now, here we go. Hi there, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I do understand and appreciate
Sorry, Darryl. I asked Lawrence to take your seat, but now you can sit at the end now. Thank you. Yeah, go on, Darryl.
Yeah, thank you. All understood, no problem.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to highlight from the report, just briefly?
Yeah, obviously take the report as read and have one highlight and two updates since the report was submitted. The point I'd like to highlight is around our strategy development. Previously, the committee has raised concerns in meetings about our frequent changes at the top and some of the periods of instability that has caused or could potentially cause. And I'd like to offer a reassurance to the committee that to mitigate against that is, as laid out in the report, that strategy development. And if you would allow me to indulge with a sailing metaphor, because of the location that we're in, if you imagine a tall ship heading to the Americas and you keep changing the captain or the first mate or other members there of the leadership team, it wouldn't be a surprise that ship doesn't make it to its destination port or maybe runs around in circles. But you'll see the extensive work that we've undertaken over the past year to engage with staff internally and external partners. It's the largest consultation piece we've ever had, supported by specialists, and the engagement and the communications are something undertaken on a level that CCAM never has before. So if we go back to my crude metaphor, if you do change the captain or the first officer or someone, all of the crew know the route, they know their part, they know where they're going and what they've got to do. So any changes there to those officers shouldn't impact them reaching that destination as it would have done. And so my two updates since the report, I think, will hopefully reinforce that point. Firstly, there was an update circulated to the committee here a few days ago on our exit from the recovery support programme. So formerly known as special measures, NHS England recognised all of the work that we've done over the past year, and we're happy, and then also happy with our plan ahead of what we need to do, improvements to make going forward. And then secondly, just publicised today, was our staff survey results that have been released, which again are the best ever. Improving trend over the last 3 years, showing improvement upon improvement. Specifically for Medway, that's the best performing operating unit within CCAM's footprint again, highest staff satisfaction results. And nationally, we are placed joint first on the leaderboard for staff motivation and happiness. So I think those 2 points support my first sailing metaphor around those improvements, those real tangible improvements that we've made moving forward.
Thank you, Darryl. And just before I open up to members, you have changed. Is it your chair you've changed just recently?
Yes, sadly, just changed recently. But again, I don't think that would have an impact, as now we have this clear strategy, and we have our. If you spoke to staff a couple of years ago and said, what is your clinical strategy? I don't think anyone could have answered that question. But now there's no change, and if you were to ask that same question to staff, they would all, to a greater or lesser extent, know what we're talking about.
So the chair movement was just a general movement, and that's been replaced now, is it?
Yes,
you've got a new replacement. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Members, does anyone would like to ask questions from CCAM? Councillor Campbell.
Hi, congratulations coming out of special measures. A lot of work has gone in, and it's actually really great to hear how fulfilled your staff feel. On that note, I mean, even just looking at the agenda today, So there were challenges you guys were facing in the ambulance service, and as we are well aware, there are challenges in the hospital as well. And I'm just thinking of that link. What, from your perspective, what's your experience of your team when they are dropping off patients at the hospital? How are you guys seeing that, and how are your team finding that experience?
Yeah, thank you. So I think I reflected last time that it's been sort of utterly transformed, is the honest opinion. So over the last couple of years, the sort of collaborative working with colleagues from the Hospital Trust has been in a different space entirely. Medway is one of the best hospital trusts for ambulance handover now. So our crews have regularly hand over their patients somewhere in the region between 12 and 15 minutes, which is, like I say, on the podium nationally most months, and certainly the best in the South East region. The experience for our patients has been utterly transformed, and the experience for our staff as well, because actually when things weren't perhaps so positive, we would find that our crews were delayed after their shifts, and that means they're then late in for the following day, and it has a knock-on impact to patient care, inevitably. And the other bit we've managed to improve as well is that we have a 15-minute target for the patient to be handed over to the hospital trust, and then a 15-minute target for our crews to become clear as well. We've also seen year-on-year reductions to that level as well, so we're just off meeting that 15-minute target now. So in terms of the overall patient experience and crew experience at handover at Medway, it's utterly transformed.
Thank you very much, Chair. And also just want to commend you on coming out with special measures. I know it cannot be easy. The public perception on your service demands excellence at all times. So being special measures does have an impact on your credibility and how people perceive the great work that you already do. In keeping with the theme of today, I want to introduce you to a new diagnosis term, pilotitis. It's a word that we're going to be using to describe the pilots that got on forever. And understand that you are running several pilots in your new integrated, multidisciplinary, integrated urgent care hubs, where you had a mixture of different levels of staff, clinicians, say mental health, police, all together, come together to then do rapid assessments on individuals to stem the flow of patients going into A&E. That's the ideal. How's that going? Because I didn't see the data in terms of the results and how it's spread about. Like, how many of those individuals had mental health problems? How many of them had drug and alcohol addictions, domestic violence? What was the spread, and how are we going to stop or move from pilotitis into this is the way we're going to be working now, because we've tested the pilot and we're happy with it. We're going to create a new service. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, and you're quite right with the pilotitis, and it's easy to fall foul of that. We're just starting our formal evaluation phase right now. All the planning work to go in for the full evaluation this month and next month, involving all partners, all stakeholders involved. The reason there wasn't a breakdown of data within the report submitted is because it's not been validated yet. That's the simple reason. So if I provided any raw data, we just haven't had the opportunity to check its validity and reliability. So that data will be forthcoming. As you correctly identified, that the streaming of those patients to the most appropriate service is what it's all about. So we will be able to break down the percentages picked up by other hospital departments or community services, mental health, etc. But I didn't want to include that specifically just at the moment, just in case there was any inaccuracies, and we haven't gone through it. But that will be forthcoming.
No, thank you. And could we ask for that? Okay, cool. And also, just depending on the results of that, what's the likelihood of these new teams staying as a new service?
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. I don't believe we've met before. So I'm Matt Webb, Deputy Chief Strategy Officer for CCAM. I think just to build on what Darryl said there, our strategy as an organisation is one that is bold, that is radical, because we recognise that the ambulance service, particularly in the South East, is in a place where doing nothing is no longer an option, and we don't have the alignment that we need to have between our patient needs and the skill sets of what we're delivering. We need to get better at standardising and ensuring a consistent response for what we would refer to high acuity cases. If you or I had a heart attack in Medway, the response should be no different to someone in Guildford within the Surrey area, versus we then need to improve a tailored response for long-term chronic comorbidities, complex patients. Now, within our strategy diagnostics, we recognise that the population is growing, the population is ageing, the population or our patient presentation is becoming much more complex. And so with that, we do need to actually start to, through a quality improvement methodology, test different approaches that perhaps the ambulance sector or the wider NHS hasn't perhaps approached before. So the evidence is clear that there's nothing wrong with the feasibility study approach, but you're absolutely right, we can often fall into the trap of paralysis through piloting or through feasibility studies. So when I talk to the quality improvement approach, what we're very clear on with the unscheduled care navigation hubs as an example is there needs to be a true problem statement, actually defining what we're looking to tackle. How do we measure that? Daryl's talked to the data there, and we can share that with the HAS separately. And then being able to actually, once we see improvements, control those sustainably. And that perhaps is one of the reasons that we've managed to step out of our special measures, out of the recovery support programme. Previously, councillor colleagues will recall, CCAM has struggled with maintaining improvements. And actually, the whole point of this is to understand what does work and how do we take that forward. It's also not just CCAM driven. We're one provider that is part of a multidisciplinary team here, so we need to be working with our partner NHS providers and commissioners to look at how we can sustainably take these forward. Daryl's touched on the strategy. There's 3 strategic goals within our strategy. One is ensuring that we enhance and improve the experience for our people. Secondly, in no particular priority order, it's delivering high quality patient care. And thirdly, which is what I perhaps just talked to, is that we are an integrated partner as part of a sustainable NHS. So absolutely, we recognise there are a number of feasibility approaches being undertaken currently, but that's to truly push and test the boundaries within how urgent emergency care is being delivered within the South East, because we know that we need to go further as a core regional provider of urgent emergency care. Lawrence may want to touch on some of the benefits we've seen from the unscheduled care navigation hubs recently, but certainly we're seeing that there is real encouraging signs to the integrated setup we have, and very happy to return with the data post-evaluation.
Yeah, just on those benefits. So as Daryl said, we haven't got the data sort of validated completely yet, but the early data suggests we're seeing somewhere in the region of a 4% reduction in conveyance to ED at the hospital already, and more so in sort of Dartford and Gratian area. And the other improvement, sort of positive bit to pull out of it is around attrition. So there's an interest in doing something different from our paramedic workforce, because it's telephone triage is a skill, and it's something different. So it gives them a period in their rota where they're not doing the routine frontline response. So we're actually seeing somewhere in the region of 30 applications to work within the urgent care navigation hub just in Medway, and work to sort of start shortlisting those colleagues start soon. So it's positive in terms of employee experience as well.
Councillor Perfect.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. My question is just a noting, actually, it's slightly relevant because we've got this committee a report following this on the CQC inspection at the Medway NHS Foundation Trust. I'm just interested in terms of obviously noting, thank you for the graphs within Appendix I around the hospital handover delays. I'm just interested in terms of your perspective in terms of the engagement with the Foundation Trust. Obviously, particularly within the CQC report, there was a number of concerns about safety. That was the core of the concerns within the CQC report. And I'm just interested in terms of noting that you've been on an improvement journey and are in a significantly improved position. I'm just interested in terms of how you're finding that engagement, any sort of strategic concerns on a macro level that you have as an organisation and maybe sharing with them. And I'm just interested generally in terms of that relationship, noting obviously the significant concerns raised within the CQC inspection about times that people are located in ED and safeguarding. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So, as I said previously, I think the relationship between the two organisations is in the best space it's been for a long time. So, you know, not only from a sort of day-to-day managing the business as usual, our managers are in daily contact with the site team at the hospital to manage the ebbs and flow of demand between the two services. But then my sort of senior team meet with the team at the hospital on a monthly basis as well, just to review performance. We were asked to comment when the CQC inspected the hospital as well. So we were asked to sort of, provide input on actually what changes we'd seen, and we were very, very clear that it had been, as I said earlier, sort of transformational in terms of patient safety, because we've moved from, an undifferentiated risk in the community and to a certain extent patients in the back of ambulances to, a much safer system where the hospital are able to bring those patients into the department and they're differentiated then. And that's, in my view, a much safer position to be in. I think the CQC report clearly highlighted that sometimes that patients are cared for in areas that I'm sure colleagues from the Hospital Trust will accept that they, don't always want that to be the case. But those patients have invariably been assessed and are waiting to go to another area. So, from a patient safety experience from an ambulance service trust perspective, it's hugely improved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Yeah, just to say again, I was thinking as Councillor Campbell was saying about the positivity in this report and how difficult trust is in terms of, community, and how all the way through this, the kind of anecdotes around the trust that there is of the service. People know when they phone for an ambulance and they're going to get great care, and that's people's perception. And then reading in here the kind of statistics, like you say, it's so pleasing to see Medway at the top. So thank you for that. I think where my brain is really going is with the previous conversation we had around the changing needs of people in Medway, and the conversation that we were just having about the specifics of training and the constant kind of growth in your teams. How do we make sure, particularly when some of the response to the changes has been to move to a digital and a phone-based consultation, how are we making sure that we're really catering particularly for people with social and communication needs, particularly when we've just been thinking about things like ASC, people that find presenting on the phone difficult or might be masking? How are we making sure that our teams can continue to deliver when perhaps it's not face-to-face, and that the training's in place with those changing needs? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's a really good question. Our trust strategy clearly is looking to shift, to change how we respond to patients. As an organisation, we currently respond to 88% of our patients physically. When we look at clinical outcome, ultimately, what was wrong with that patient, 13.5% of patients actually had a true life-threatening or emergency injury or illness. That demonstrates that currently our physical response to how we respond is very much unaligned with patient need. So we're looking to reduce our physical response as an emergency service, and we recognise that actually we can better respond, offer a greater patient experience, keep patients safer so they're not actually waiting within ED corridors across our entire footprint, and improve the staff experience through adapting how we respond. And one of the ways that we'll be looking to move forward with that is through a virtual response over the 5-year duration of our strategy. To your point, and for reassurance to members of the public, we absolutely recognise that not everyone will be able to engage through technology and perhaps engage with an assessment through a telephone call or through video conferencing. If that's not the case, we absolutely still maintain existing processes to respond how we do so now. And we also have the ability to send a physical response. It's just that we're looking to better align that with patient need. Now, there absolutely is benefit to the virtual setups that we're currently trialling. And as we say, we'll return, I'm sure, with the fuller data. One of those is that the closer that we can get the response or the clinicians to the patient, the better the outcome. That is well evidenced. Hence, we know that NHS England have been pushing the integrated neighbourhood teams. So, as I say, for our high acuity, life-threatening emergency calls, we need a consistent, standardised response that can be led from our 2 emergency operations centres, and we dispatch physical resources from them at the Medway site and in Crawley, our west site. But when we respond to patients with perhaps more complex chronic long-term conditions, actually what we're seeing is having these multidisciplinary hubs closer to the local population, so we understand the needs of those patients, and perhaps we're closer to pathways, we can understand service commissioning and pathway gaps. It improves, again, patient experience, it improves patient safety, it improves the staff experience, and actually through a whole systems approach, it's a much more sustainable approach. Because what we're also finding is we are able to cater to and offer a more tailored, targeted response to frequent attenders, frequent callers, frequent users of services. So hopefully that offers some reassurance around the virtual option. And as I say, hopefully, I'm very happy to share this. Our strategy outlines how we aim to bring care and our response closer to patients. I think one other example would be, as an organisation, we're moving to a divisional model. Currently, operationally, we're set up east and west, and that was prior to the integrated care systems coming into place. But clearly, we have 4 integrated care systems across our footprint, and an east and west split doesn't help us when we're trying to deliver a service. We've appointed 2 of the 3 divisional directors. We'll shortly be going out for a 3rd divisional director for the areas of Kent, Surrey and Frimley, and Sussex. And again, that means that we can start to, through those divisional models, structure, resource, and ensure that the skill sets align to the local needs of the populations, so we ensure that our structure and response we're offering is most effective and appropriate for the patients we're responding to.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations of coming out of special measures, and also congratulations of your staff being happier, and that's what I want to get to. The freedom to speak up, was that, I take it that was the pot of it, the grounding of it, and as an ex-999 call handler, I don't think there's many jobs where morale of staff in the ambulance service and A&E is more important, because you're dealing with the members of the public when they're actually at their most stressful time. So congratulations on that. But what came out of the freedom to speak up? What was some of the problems and issues that you were dealing with, and how have you overcome them, and how are you going to sustain that to keep this morale up, because it's brilliant. Yeah, that's the question.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. The Speak Up culture is definitely an area that we've sought to improve through our recovery support programme. We started off with the improvement journey, of which clearly the experience of our people was a significant area of focus. Now that we've moved to implementing our strategy, we have a number of what we're referring to as Tier 1 programmes, so areas of strategic transformation that we absolutely need to focus on, maintain and sustain. One of those is our People Improvement Programme, of which absolutely continuing to ensure the culture and the psychological safety is effective and appropriate across the organisation is a key part of that. I think that's demonstrated within our latest workforce figures. So we know that our vacancy rate, we have a target of 5%. Our vacancy rate is currently 0.1%. So given, despite the challenges that we're seeing across the NHS and across the urgent emergency care sector, actually we are fully established. And those figures are certainly strong within Lawrence's operating unit within Medway. Our annual turnover, we committed to having a target of 15% this year. Our current annual turnover, or rolling turnover, is 15.5%. That's the best it's been in a number of years. We've seen a significant improvement in retention, particularly in our contact centres. I know previously we've discussed at this very committee, actually there were concerns around retaining staff within those contact centre environments. Lawrence previously talked to actually the new multi-purpose site we have in Medway, which houses our 111 service, our emergency operations centre, and our frontline operations as well. We've also significantly improved our time to hire. So we have a target of 60 days. Currently, we're averaging, I think, around about 55 to 58 days. That all talks to improving the employee experience, and hopefully, whilst I don't have specific freedom to speak up data to hand right now, of course can share that, the fact that our retention has jumped significantly and we're able to retain staff not only across our field operations functions but across all of our corporate and support areas, and there's a significant improvement in the contact centres, I think just demonstrates the work and the effort that we've put in to date. Yes, we have come out of the recovery support programme, we've come out of special measures, we've now moved from what's known as the National Oversight Framework Level 4, moving into Level 3, but the work doesn't stop. There's three key areas that we will be continuing with as an organisation. Firstly, it won't be a surprise around financial sustainability. We need to work with our partners to again, trial, test and develop new ways of working so actually we can ensure the system is operating through a much more integrated and sustainable approach. Secondly, it's around a continuing board development, because we know that the areas that were highlighted by this very committee previously were around the sustainability and continuity of our board and the leadership that comes from that. But at last, and by no means least, is we absolutely will be continuing with our people improvement programme. That will be a continued priority through 25-26, and that's looking at a number of areas. One is culture. Secondly, it's actually the more practical, functional aspects of the HR provision. So again, how we recruit, how we retain, how we train. It's looking at our organisational development and our training offer or learning and development offer across the organisation. So very happy to come and sort of outline those in further detail at a later date, but there is an awful lot of work that we're continuing to take into the new financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Gilmore.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations on coming up to special measures. It's a particularly interesting report for me. I love statistics and surveys and things like that. But I just wondered, as a general question really, that if you were coming back in a year's time, which I'm sure you will, what are you looking forward to even improving the result of a similar survey? And is there anything that you can foresee that might, take it off the rails? Any particular real concern that you can see coming down the road?
I think, in answer to the question, if I start strategically, as I mentioned, we have those three strategic goals around how we continue to improve the experience for our people, deliver high quality patient care, and really are that integrated partner as part of a sustainable NHS. I've talked around the sort of the people experience aspects. There are some areas that we absolutely have recognised we need to improve off the back of the staff survey, broadly or across all areas, and we have seen significant improvement. But there are areas such as discrimination around gender or ethnicity, that whilst we have seen improvements across the board, there are areas that we need to focus on, particularly in the equality or equity, diversity and inclusion space. As far as coming back in a year's time, we're in position currently of submitting our annual plan operationally as part of the national planning process. We currently are looking to continue our commitment to deliver our Category 2 mean response within the 30-minute target. That is typically the proxy for the ambulance sector proxy measure, but also we know that there will be focus on other targets. We are very much focused on, again, that integration piece, sustainability piece. What we really are looking to promote, influence and encourage from a CCAM perspective and as a regional provider of urgent emergency care is a multi-year planning approach. We do need to move away from sort of annual cyclical planning processes, because if we're going to truly transform services for the better of our people and our patients, then actually we need to start looking beyond 12 months and actually how we're going to deliver our strategy over the remaining 4 years. Certainly, as mentioned earlier on, the digital aspect will be a focus over the next 12 months. We want to push ahead in understanding how we can start to enhance and improve the virtual offer. With that comes the move to these divisions and actually how we can bring care closer to patients, closer to local populations. We will continue, as I say, with the People Improvement Programme. We're looking at a range of opportunities from the perspective of education and training. We're looking at apprenticeships, both across operational and clinical aspects of the workforce, but also across our support and corporate functions. We know there are some areas where, whilst I've said retention is much to improve, we still need to ensure that we have a supportive recruitment approach. One of those would be our operational support functions, our fleet part of the business, as an example. And I think lastly, the last bit I wanted to mention was the, what was I going to say? Talking about integration, understanding pathway, service and commissioning gaps. So we have the benefit of access to an awful lot of data. From an ambulance service perspective, typically we are the point of entry for a lot of patients and members of the public into the NHS through 111 or 999, and we absolutely need to look at integrating those data sets to understand actually how patients move through the full healthcare system, and understanding actually how we can use that data to improve pathway services that are afforded to local populations.
Thank you. Councillor Crozier?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. We know that happy staff makes a happy service. You mentioned 15% turnover of staff. I think that's what I heard you say. Where are the 15% going to? And I would hope they're retiring, or whereabouts are they going?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. And I might actually hand to Lawrence.
Could you just turn your mic off, Councillor Crozier?
I'll hand to Lawrence in a second just to give some local context. As I say, our current target is 15%. That from what we've seen previously, that's not a concern. That would comprise a number of examples. That is retirement within that. That's promotional opportunities. We also have across the NHS and across the ambulance sector development programs which actually encourage individuals to move forward. One of the things we probably what we will be considering with our partners is also through the whole systems lens, how we don't just take a sort of narrow isolated provider approach to this. So we know that in other parts of the country there are rotational models. You can increase the capability, the expertise of your clinicians by actually perhaps considering rotating them through different parts of the urgent and emergency care sector. So if I was to take an advanced paramedic practitioner, of which Lawrence is also one of those, working within primary care for a couple of days a week, within an emergency department, within the contact centre, and on a frontline physical resource. So I can't give you sort of a well-defined answer at the moment. We can certainly bring that data back and give you a breakdown, but it would be promotional opportunities, it's retirements, and it's actually, it will be positively seeing colleagues move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. Just some things from me, really. I think it's where I started, Darryl, about that. My questions were, what's the staff turnover? So obviously a summary report of that would be really good because, I would have had that, and it'd be really good to see the staff survey results as well. I'm just going to ask a question that I've asked you before when times weren't so great. So it's really, really good to hear that the staff survey is really good, the results are coming in well. But obviously there was an issue of bullying, there was a bullying culture across the trust. Has that gone? Has that just disappeared now and there's no issue at all? Because I'm hearing everything's wonderful, we've got some good results, and I've no doubt Medway results are going to be great because we've got a good team, I've no doubt of that. But that bullying culture was a serious issue, and I just don't believe it's just disappeared. So can someone comment on that?
Yeah, obviously that was a concern that was highlighted before. And across the board, all of the staff feedback has been that it's been reducing. So as Matt spoke about the freedom to speak up, there've been a huge amount of investment gone into supporting staff welfare, promoting things. Even the screensavers at the moment on our computers is about behaviour and speaking up. So a lot of work has gone into fostering that positive culture. So no, obviously I'd love to be able to sit here and say that's completely been eradicated and there's no bullying at all. But when we can come back to you with the breakdown of the staff survey figures, I'm sure you see a dramatic reduction in that area because that has been an area of focus for us to improve upon.
and action taken with managers that weren't listening or weren't worrying about the people that were saying that there was issues, that's improved?
Yeah, it's actual, not just talking, but actual physical actions. So changes to systems and processes and mechanisms, as well as, for example, we had just the one Futsu Guardian, but we've now got a whole team working in that area. Because obviously for an organisation our size, just one specialist isn't enough. So there's that investment in the right roles, in the training, a lot of training packages going out to make staff aware, starting a couple of years ago with sexual safety workshops. So a whole range of mechanisms put in place to improve that.
Excellent. Can I just ask, I suppose it'd be Lawrence really, we have a lack of access to GPs, right? I mean, you only have to turn on our local Facebook or look in our emails, probably, most of us councillors. I certainly get a load. What's the impact of that, the lack of GP access, surgery access? Because it's a big issue here in Medway, where people can't get an appointment, people have to go onto an app, Anima or something like that, and they just can't get the answer they want, or the Anima app shuts down halfway through the day and they can't get any answers. What's the impact of that on your service with pressure of people that just, because they can't get anywhere else, they're coming to you?
Yeah, every sympathy. I think I experienced the Anima pain myself, being a Medway resident. I guess I'd probably draw you back to the Urgent Care Navigation Hub, which is put in place to sort of deal with that stream of work. So there's sort of category 3 validation piece of work. So there's more of that going on than ever before. Our crews don't really directly access GP surgeries anymore. So if the patient has a chronic health condition, and it's something that the crew feel that the patient might need a prescription or something like that, for instance, then we will speak to a GP in those circumstances. But largely, most of our shared decision making, our pathways access, nowadays is driven by the urgent care navigation hubs, or is dealt with remotely via our contact centres in 111. So it would be remiss of me to say it doesn't have an impact. Of course it does. It has an impact across the whole region. But there's more being done than ever before to deal with that, I guess.
And the 111 service, again, I can almost say to you, it's really good to hear that you had at one stage was the highest performer, or second highest, whatever performer. It doesn't seem that way when it comes to residents, or residents though, does it? I think the first call, maybe, it's the callbacks, it's the people that come afterwards, it's when people respond after those calls and how long it takes sometimes, and, are you, even in this winter pressure, still performing at that level? Because you had a couple of dips. Is it still going as well as expected?
I was just going to say, it's not one for me, because I look after the ambulance side of it. I'll leave that for my colleagues to answer.
Yeah, our 111 figures have been improving. The abandoned call rate has significantly improved. The call answer time has improved. So, again, it's like most things that we're saying today. Obviously, we recognise we're not perfect, and there's a lot more work that can be done, improvements that can be done, but we are heading in the right direction. So there's an upward trend on all of those things. So the length of time for the callback has reduced over the last 2 years, year on year.
It's fine. I've only got 2 quick ones now. So, an important one though, has there been any rise in the failed attendance? Like, because you're so busy, ambulances attending a premises on time, or getting them to somewhere like Maidstone. I'm going to ask it for a colleague who's not here tonight. As you know, Councillor Wiley would be asking this question. Getting someone to the stroke unit in Maidstone, for example, in time. Have we had any failed attendances or late attendances that has caused us problems? Because I know we get a few emails like that, but is that a major issue, or is it working pretty well for the team?
When you say failed attendance,
I was trying to think of, I was hoping, Lawrence, you would tell me a late attendance, or it's taken too long where the person's still hours on the floor or whatever. Is that improving?
So all I'd say is Medway is consistently one of the top performers across Kent, Surrey and Sussex. So our C1 mean is the best in Kent, Surrey and Sussex. So we're just over the 7-minute target. We normally meet the C2. So the C2 means under the 30-minute commission target. So it's not to say that occasionally patients will, clearly it's a mean, patients will wait longer. But I think what I'd say is, whether it's, waiting for your call to be answered in one of our contact centres, to the point when the ambulance is dispatched, to the point where they're handing over to my colleagues behind me, the whole journey, certainly in Medway, is as slick as it's been for a long time.
So no, it's even good going to Maidstone, for example, for our stroke units and stuff like that.
No,
really
no issues with that.
There's no
that
issue
pathway I'd say is working well.
I suppose it comes if you're handing over to another trust that has to take them somewhere else. Maybe that might be the issue.
Yeah, we share sort of resources with the Maidstone area about 10% mutually. So at any one day, 10% of my crews will be in Maidstone and vice versa. But generally speaking, if we're conveying a patient to Maidstone, it's going to the hyper-acute stroke unit, and we don't tend to see issues with that service. We're straight in, as it were.
My final one is around mental health. We know it's a big issue across the patch, but here in Medway, is the partnership? Do we still have that partnership strong, where we got mental health are working with you guys, going out with your paramedics, or I know the police were doing it as well at some point, but is there a good partnership with I'm going to get it wrong and say KMPT because they're not that now, but have we got a good partnership with our mental health team?
So I'll come to Darryl in a second, because I know he's led on a big piece of work with KMPT. So we still have the joint response unit. So we have a car that's crewed by one of our experienced paramedics alongside a police officer, and we know that in Medway we are an outlier in terms of mental health presentations and sadly violence and aggression against our crews as well. So that resource is hugely important to service provision in Medway. In terms of access for our crews to specialist resources, I'll turn to Darryl, because we just had something introduced called the 836 line, which again has been a massive step forward in terms of provision, and he's the expert.
I'll say expert. Yeah, we obviously recognise mental health presentations are an issue across the whole of CCAM footprint on nationally, but particularly in Medway is a bit of an outlier. Taking someone with an acute mental health crisis to the local ED is not always the best place for them. Unless there's a physical health need, then usually there's a alternative service which is more appropriate for their needs. So we've been working very closely with KMPT over the past year to develop alternative pathways and other options to get our patients the most appropriate care for them. So making greater use of the safe havens, developing safe havens, of which there's 10 across Kent and Medway now. The 24/7 haven that's available in Medway has seen an increase in conveyances to there from us, steadily increasing over the last year, which is really good. It's increasing that utilisation. And then, as Lawrence mentioned, the development of the 836 service was something that was historically available to the police. If they were looking at something like a Section 136 detention, they would phone and get specialist advice on a 24/7 bypass line. Well, that's now been expanded and opened up to us just a few months ago, so that our crews are able to get specialist advice on what they think is the most appropriate service for that patient, be that a hear and treat over the telephone, someone coming out to scene, of what we refer to as a see and treat to give assessment and support face-to-face, or taking them somewhere else, such as the safe haven. It's early days, but we're making good use of the service, and again we're in an evaluation phase at the moment, looking at that data, getting feedback and seeing what we can do to improve the utilisation of that. So yeah, a lot of work has gone into those mental health pathways to try and serve that cohort.
So important. That's really good to hear. I mean, I just finished by saying, obviously, congratulations, like the team has said, and Matt, I know you and I clashed in a nice way the last time you was here when I said about radical changes at board level and radical business plans and stuff. I know you've said it again tonight. I will take it back because it seems to be a radical change. I hope it carries on in that way, and I hope when we see you again in a year's time, you're telling us even more good stuff about what's going on, because your teams on the ground do an amazing job. I'm not saying you don't, but the teams on the ground do an amazing job, and that's never forgotten here on this committee. And it's really good that they're seeing the organisation and the governance being changed in the same way, and I think that means something. You can come back quickly, Matt, if you want to, and then I'll pass.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Chair, for those kind words. Hopefully what you've seen within the report and through the published strategy is we absolutely are an ambulance service that is focused on moving forward and actually being a leader within urgent emergency care. We're focusing on modernisation of the service, such as the virtual options, integration and sustainability. I didn't have an opportunity just to jump in on some of those questions. I'll just very quickly, if I may, so I think there's some important assurances here. Stroke, call to hospital. There's a mean requirement to undertake that within 90 minutes. We're within that mean across our entire footprint. We know that actually we're in a good position within the east of our sector. There were a couple of additional questions around turnover, and we did have a discussion previously around the NHS 111 and EOC contact centres. So turnover's the best it's been in 2 years, that 15%. Within 111, we've seen an improvement in turnover reduction by 15%, and in the EOC by 10%. Again, that's the best we've seen in a number of years. And then my last point was around, I just want to be clear, Chair, that you mentioned the sort of the concerns around the bullying culture. It will take time to improve. We're not there yet. There's a long road ahead, but there's absolutely a commitment from the organisation to move forward. And we are very much promoting a culture of openness and trust throughout the organisation. Absolutely, I'm sure you'll invite us back to talk about that as we continue on our journey. A couple of examples that I was noting down as we were talking. Daryl's mentioned an investment in additional freedom to speak up guardians. We've expanded that team because we want to hear from our people. I'm not going to sort of hide figures away from you. We've seen an increase in people speaking up and in grievance cases. But that's a positive, because previously we were an organisation where actually our people were afraid or perhaps hesitant to actually come forward. So that, I think, is a good indicator from an organisational perspective. We've invested in employee relations training for our leadership teams. We have a sexual safety charter commitment throughout the organisation that our wider leadership team has committed to. And we have improved grievance triaging. So the length of time to actually triage grievances and concerns that come forward, and also the time from submitting that or raising that concern to closure. So hopefully that just demonstrates some of the improvements that we've already seen in the last 12 months. And again, it's a journey. We're not there yet. It will take a number of years, but we are very much committed to supporting our people.
Thanks, mate. Because before there were people struggling in silence and suffering, and I'm glad that we've got them measures in place. Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the report.
Is that seconded? Seconded. And we've got the extra bits done by Terry for a bit of a summarised report. Is that all right? Not tomorrow, but if we can have some of the good stuff that we brought out just on, that'd be really good. And some of the figures we've got down already, which I know Douglas asked for, so I know we can always ask you guys for more anyway. But please extend our thanks back to the teams as well. Thank you very much. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jane, would you like to come up to the table, to the front, please? I sound like an auction here. It's not good. We've just got some mic changes just quickly being done. Welcome, Jane, and welcome, Sarah, to tonight's meeting. Did you want to give, is there anything you want to add to the report that you've already put out, Jane?
Thanks, Chair. I think I just want to put a little bit of context, but I'll take the report as read. So I think the first thing to say, this was a report that came after a unannounced visit into our ED in February 24. The piece for me was that, particularly around that time and previous to that, we had been talking with the CQC because we were extremely challenged over that winter going into December and then post. and actually pulled together quite a number of actions that we were putting in place to try and relieve some of the pressure that we were seeing within the department in particular. We had gone into the corridor, and a lot of the comments and the observation relates to care of patients in that corridor. What I will say is that we did not get any information on the day of the inspection. I was not highlighted any issues at all, which I would expect as a CEO. I was on site. But also, we did not get any indication until late April. So it was some months later. That's notwithstanding, we were still doing our improvement plan, and actually we came out of the corridor at the beginning of April. And that was because we'd put in a number of initiatives around, the phase 1 around our acute medicine model. We were just about to open up an additional ward, which we'd got funding for. And we'd done a number of measures so that we could come out that corridor. Since that time, we have remained out of that corridor. We've had odd times where we've had to use it when we're moving patients around, and just after Christmas, when we had a real influx of flu this year. But we remain out of that corridor. Notwithstanding that, we are still under extreme pressure. And we do have other undesignated areas within the department in majors where patients are residing until they are admitted or discharged. So we remain under a lot of pressure. I could hear the questions for the CCAM around ambulance handover times. We have sustained that performance for 2 years, and that is the right thing to do, because prior to that, as I'm sure many of you know, we did not offload, and therefore were having quite a large amount of ambulances outside and difficulty in turnaround times. So it's the right thing that we offload. That causes more problems for us because we are then crowded. Just to put it into context, so at the time we had a large amount of no criteria to reside patients. We continue to have that, and actually over the last couple of months it has spiked up to 160. So when you think about our bed base is 550 odd, you know, when you've got 160 people, for whatever reason, it is a large amount of our bed base that causes the flow problems that we have. We've not been complacent about what we can do internally about improving discharge, and we are working with our partners in the system to try and relieve some of that piece. I think the other bit what I want to say is that, you know, on behalf of the organisation and me and myself as the CEO, I am sorry for the fact that patients in our community did not get the care that they deserved, and particularly relating to the privacy and dignity and respect. That's not how that organisation should work and is working, and therefore, you know, I am really sorry that that has happened. I'm going to let Sarah talk a little bit in a minute about some of the improvements. So we've been working with the CQC over the last year, and we built on the improvement plan that we had, and we've been working that through, and I'll let Sarah talk about that. But some of the improvements that we've made, we have had, at the time in February, we were having extreme waits of patients waiting in the department over 12 hours plus. And there are long waits, and as many people know, it's, you know, for the detriment of patients being in the department for a very long time. Therefore, for us, it's about reducing that. Our performance in ED has been one of the best in the region, and we have seen now the national target was 76. We sit up around about 78, and we have been over 80%. So the improvements that we're trying to make are significant. The wait time for 12-hour waits is starting to come down, and that's really important. I think the last few bits that I want to just talk about is about patient feedback. If you look back in February 24, it was around about 65% that patients would recommend us or have said that we gave good care. Actually, it's now 75% and above. And like CCAM, we've had our staff survey, because a lot of this is about how the staff felt at the time, which completely understand, and the pressure that they were under. But generally across our staff survey results, we've seen over the past 4 years, we've improved significantly each time. And actually it's probably the best year that we've had this year. But we're not complacent because we've still got a long way to go. So there's quite a number of things that we have done. We're doing a big cultural transformation programme at the moment, which were commissioned in the summer of last year. And like CCAM, actually, we changed our freedom to speak up service. We now have a service that is 24/7. So any person, any staff member can actually contact at any time of the day. So I'll stop there. But Sarah?
Thanks, Jane. So you've got some of the improvements in the report anyway, but just to give you a bit of an insight into the work that we've been doing, we redeveloped our improvement plan that was in place from the previous year on the back of the information that we received from CQC at the end of April. We re-looked at it, reworked it to make sure we were absolutely addressing the concerns that had been highlighted within that. And we've had a lot of oversight of the progress that we've been making and the actions that we've been implementing since then. So we've had 2 weekly meetings initially with CQC, that's now gone down to monthly. We've also had 2 weekly oversight meetings with the ICB and NHSE quality teams, really focusing in on the work that we're doing. And ICB also came in last year to have a look at ED and see some of the work that we've been doing. The improvements span over the themes that were identified within the CQC report, but we've ensured that we're addressing those concerns at every level of the organisation. It's not just about what happens in ED. So we are looking as an organisation in terms of what we do. So Jane's already mentioned how we listen to staff. We've also set up specific listening sessions for the ED staff to just come and talk to senior leaders about what's happening and how they're feeling. We've got a new policy framework down there so that it is really clear for the staff in the department about how they seek support when we get into extreme situations and they're concerned about overcrowding and care, so that they've got that clear route of escalation, and also that they're clear about the support that they can expect from the organisation. We've looked at the operational leadership within the department, so we've got additional matrons now, and we've got matrons on site, on the floor, 7 days a week. That's really important because they're role modelling the kind of care that we want to see, but they're also implementing matrons checks to look at some of the fundamentals of care. And as part of that, we've made it really clear that their role is around zero tolerance of poor care, zero tolerance of not meeting patients' hygiene needs, and that's built into those matrons checks so that we can also look back and audit that we've got assurance that that is happening and that we've got the type of care that we want to see on the floor within the department. We're ensuring that the rest of the hospital is supporting ED, so we've got those dietitians checks that are set out within the report, but other teams within the hospital are also routinely in the department. So the frailty nurses, the respiratory team, the integrated discharge team as well, so that they're all very present and supporting the work that's happening there. And we've also put improvement into the hands of the staff. So we've got an improvement board in the corridor. We deliberately put it there to send a signal that we weren't going back into the corridor. That happens 3 times a week, where staff can raise any concern. Sometimes it's not within their gift to address, so they can be escalated up to other forums within the care group or division, or even up to exec. But also it gives the staff an opportunity to think about what they can do to make improvements and to track those through. And then there's a newsletter that comes monthly to the staff that details the improvements that they've taken forward as a department. So there's lots of other stuff that's happening, but I'm sure there'll be questions as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Just before I go over to members, obviously I know it's difficult, Jane, because, you know, no CEO wants to come here when there's been failures in that sort of privacy and dignity elements with our patients, and I know that, and you know, you recognise that as soon as you come here, I know, and sat it this evening, but obviously it's a concern for members. Councillor Perfect.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both for coming along. And can I thank you, Jane? I know, we meet very regularly, and since I've become the opposition leader, I've really appreciated certainly the engagement that myself, you, Councillor Wildey, and now your new chair, John Goulson, have had on an ongoing basis and continue to have. So I do appreciate that. And I don't think anything that I'm about to say will be a surprise, given we've already met since this discussion. I think, I'm extremely concerned not just about the report, but in terms of the ongoing sort of position and ensuring that the trust is on a journey to sort of not only financial sustainability, which I know is still a significant challenge, but also in terms of the care that is being provided. I just wanted to start firstly just around the safe judgment and obviously the inadequate. I know obviously referencing what you've just said and also what you've said elsewhere that there is a feeling that the ED department is now much safer. I'm just interested in what work is going to be undertaken in order to make sure that that's a sustainable improvement and is there for the long term, because obviously we've seen, if you go through CQC reports going back, it's a consistent thread. Obviously there's an improvement, we go backwards, there's an improvement, we go backwards, and I know that residents feel significant concern about that, both within Medway but also within Swale as well. So there's that piece. My second piece is just around the wider strategic plan around all of this for the organisation. What is the sort of, obviously, noting that safe is obviously the main challenge, but obviously there's still issues within the effective caring and responsive categories. What, particularly are you seeing as improvements that you're driving in those three parts of the report? And what sort of further improvements are you seeing, have you seen since February 24, but are you going to continue to drive, I guess, in the next 12 months? And then just finally for me, just in terms of obviously the well-led piece, obviously you're leaving as the Chief Executive. I've had conversations with John, etc., about the future of that, and I won't discuss that in the public domain. But I'm just interested in terms of, I believe we're on 9 CEOs, obviously, since 2007. It's not your fault, but I know there's significant challenges in that area. So I'm just interested if you could update, obviously, wider members and the public and others who may be watching this, just about what is being put in place in terms of the leadership of the Trust moving forward to ensure that the first two questions that I've asked in terms of the sustainability of the improvements are delivered for the long term. Thank you, Chair.
I'll start, if that's okay. So I think I'll do the last question. One of the things for me is that I've been there 4 years, and I probably would have continued to, I would have continued to be there. This is because of family reasons that I'm going back down home, so because I live on the coast. So I can't give you a definitive answer about the next steps because they're still being worked through. But as soon as we can, then we'll be having conversations. I know John will be about that replacement. You're quite right, I'm probably one of the longest running CEOs. But it's important that, I've got a very good exec team, and I think that's important. Members have been in that team for at least 2-3 years, so it's really important, if not longer, some of them. That consistency is important that continues. So I think that's important around that. Just around the safe judgment, the bit about that, as I said, is related to the corridor care that we have. And I will say this, and I've said this in the organisation, we must not tolerate corridor care. We have seen a significant increase in the number of emergency attendances. So if you look at where we were that year, it was probably around about February 23 was 14,595. Now we're seeing 16,585. We've gone from, I probably see about 600, 650 people a day. So that's a significant increase. And there's lots of reasons, and we can talk about it, but there's lots of reasons why that is happening, and I heard you talking to CCAM about a number of them. The sustainable change is really important. We have a strategy, and it is patient first, that helps drive improvements. And the improvements that you've seen within the organisation over this last period of time has been driven through that methodology. And the organisation owns that methodology. It's not just an improvement methodology, it's actually how we do business. It's how we've put the management system in. So that is now ingrained, and we're rolling that down even further right to the front line about how we do those improvements. So it's not just a one-off, because you're absolutely right. You don't just do one improvement and then think that's it. This is about continuous improvement. So we've got a methodology, we've got a way of doing it, and it's actually embedded, started to be really embedded into the organisation. So that piece is so important about how we drive that forward. I think, you know, Sarah's highlighted a number of improvements that we have already put in around ED. I think it is a department that is under extreme pressure, and we haven't seen that. The foot, you know, hasn't come off the pedal at all this year. And so it's about how we manage that in a different way. As I said, there are improvements that we are doing internally around the patient flows. So acute medicine, the frailty model is really important. We have just done a piece of work where a clinical review was done, where it significantly says about the number of frailty patients coming to us. Actually, they could have been cared for in a different way elsewhere. And so we are working through the Health and Care Partnership, through the Urgent Emergency Care Board, to actually identify what that pathway, the right pathways for frailty patients are. And that is significant for us. So that work is ongoing, so it's important. It's not just the work that we do internally, but it's the work that we do externally as well. And, you know, we can't do it on our own. We take responsibility for our organisation. But actually, if we're going to solve some of this, we need to do it together and do it differently. So I think that's... does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Chair. I think that's comprehensive in terms of the response.
You said most of the things that I was going to say, Jane, so not really, but I guess there's other work that we've done internally around effectiveness that is also probably important to mention. So when the inspectors came in on that day, it was phase 1 of our new medical model. That development has continued, and that's about getting patients to the right place in a timely way. So that is still ongoing. And there's been a lot of internal work that's been led by the medics internally to really challenge each other in terms of how they do that, how they work together. Which has also moved us forward. There's still more to do. It's probably worth mentioning as well, it's not only about getting patients to the right onward care destination, there's also work to ensure that we're not bringing patients in unnecessarily. So work with primary care, and our CMO, Alison, does a lot of work with primary care. So particularly thinking about patients at the end of their life, ensuring they've got the right plans in place and that they're able to be supported in their place of choosing, and that we're doing that well, and also working with CCAM to ensure that we're not conveying people unnecessarily. So that also is an ongoing piece of work. And then we've also got a really quite successful virtual ward within the trust. So 80 to 100 patients will be being cared for with a criteria to reside, but at home. So there's remote monitoring and staff that will go out and work with those patients. And that's another thing that we're doing within the trust. We're doing really well and being asked to speak on that nationally, and there's further work that we want to do there to provide care to people in a different way.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Hammond-Ishay.
Thank you, Chair. And nurse to nurse, Jane, I understand and I can truly empathise with the pain you're going through with this report. I know that you've put in a lot of work, you and your team. However, we do know unannounced inspections do raise a lot of concerns, particularly to the general public. There's some information there that, as a clinician, I'm rather alarmed by and disappointed by, and that's just getting some of the basics right in terms of delivering effective care. If I was to mention Christian Eriksson, Francis Mwamba, Tom Lockyer, these are footballers that had cardiac arrests while playing football. The support was there, and they managed to leave with their lives intact or after having follow-up care. So the general public, when they see that for basic life support, we're getting 82.6%, intermediate life support, 68.82%, advanced life support, 80%. That to me indicates the basics are not being mapped up or managed effectively. So I'm just looking for what sort of safeguards are we putting in place to increase that level of training capability for life support. You should imagine being a patient in the ED department, you should be getting probably 95% quality care at least. So when I'm seeing the lowest figure here for intermediate life support at 68.82%, that just rings a lot of alarm bells. So I would really want assurances that on your dashboards that you're actually monitoring not just capacity of your staffing, but competency of your staffing in terms of training and capabilities. Yeah, that's it really. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we are monitoring that. So the care group, the division, all report through to the executive, and we're looking at all of the indicators on a monthly basis, although it's being done much more regularly by the team actually within the department. It's probably worth mentioning as well that we've had a really successful improvement project running through a breakthrough objective weekly huddle around avoidable double two calls. So that's where patients have deteriorated and required that level of resuscitation support, and we felt that there was, that could have been avoided. So our CMO has led that with absolute buy-in from an engagement from all of the divisions, all staff groups, and it's made a really significant difference, particularly in the ED department where we were seeing avoidable double twos happening a couple of years ago. So that monitoring is continuing, but we're not driving that now because it's been such a successful project. It's really turned the dial, and we've seen that that's not the case, that patients are deteriorating without that identification happening. We've also got a different front door model that's gone in line with national guidance, but we were one of the pilot sites in implementing that, so that we are taking patients' observations as soon as they're checking into ED. And again, that helps us have a better indication of exactly what that person's position is, rather than just relying on the history that they're giving at that immediate point. So that's when people have walked into the department. We've got a project that will be starting in the next few months, which is a connected observations project, where we will have all of the observations that are taken from patients are uploaded immediately into our record system, and our art team, our outreach team, will have sight of every patient across the trust and be able to identify anybody that's flagging up as well as a kind of backup to the work that happens face-to-face with patients now. So I think there's further to go on that. I think we're doing quite well in relation to identification of patients who are deteriorating. In fact, we're doing really well in relation to that. There's further work to do with the training and making sure we've absolutely got the assurance on that, but it is being monitored and overseen.
Councillor Campbell.
Hi. Yes, as others have said, it's difficult to read report. The news of the report being published, I think, has landed very badly, understandably so. And some of the questions I wanted to ask about was around sustainability. Councillor Perfect has already beat me to it. So I just have a more operational question in mind. So there's some significant changes. Clearly, there are a lot of projects you're putting in place and you're progressing to try and address gaps. And like you say, there are so many stakeholders involved in how the hospital functions. With the upheaval of you leaving as well, I want to know how you're going to safeguard service continuity and keep staff and patients' interests at heart as this happens. And the second question I wanted to ask was, well, when I saw on social media, when this report came out in the press, there were loads of comments from people across Medway sharing their experiences. And pretty soon it turned quite ugly and it became quite racist towards the staff. It was really quite sickening, really, because obviously the NHS is our most sort of high-profile, employer of immigrant labor, and it functions pretty much because of the kind of professionals we import. But people were really, people were really questioning the training or professionalism or expertise of some of the members of staff based on their own experience, and it was turning quite ugly. And I just wondered, that made me think, how are you looking after your staff through this, and have you encountered any of that, or is it just people mouthing off on social media that's insignificant?
I'll take the first bit, really. I think, whilst, yes, I'm leaving, as I said, I've got a stable exec team who have been working with me throughout the last few years, certainly that I've been here. And I think that's really important, because this isn't about just one person. It's about how we take the organisation forward. So I think, to give assurance, the team have been together for a while now. It was new when I came in. Most people hadn't been there very long at all. But the thing about that is we're all driving in the same direction. We've got a very strong chair, John Galston, who's got a lot of NHS experience. He is committed to Medway, and the board is committed in terms of what we are doing going forward. So whilst I may be stepping away, it is very clear, and John's made it very clear, that particularly things like Patient First, which is our quality driver, that's what we're doing in terms of improving things within the organisation. He is clear that that will continue, and that is really, really important. So it is always unnerving when someone's leaving, but I think I'm leaving behind the things that will continue to improve and drive and go forward, and I think that's really important. Because any sustainability has got to not rely on one individual. It's got to be able to take things forward and move on. So I think, for me, that's the important bit around that piece. The piece about what you said about in the comments that people made, I'm, absolutely, looking after our staff is paramount. And having spoken with the staff about, I've done it on quite a number of occasions, as you can imagine, prior to the report coming out and over this last year. And it's important we do look after our staff, particularly in ED, because, as I said, they have been extremely and continue to be very challenged. And so, as Sarah said, there has been a number of things that we've put in place, particularly for ED. But then there's the wider piece that I've just talked about. So the freedom to speak up if they feel they cannot speak to their immediate manager or whatever it is, they have that obligation, they can use that service. The piece about the cultural transformation, because of some of the things that we were hearing, certainly from my perspective, it was important that we had some sort of vehicle to be able to really look at our culture and see what we can do to support our staff going forward. And so we've been working with Absolute Diversity since it's what I commissioned in the summer last year. And therefore, it sort of starts with me and John and the board, but we are now actually working at divisional and then using that methodology working down the organisation. At the moment, we're just going through a phase of actually doing a large amount of listening sessions. So both John and I have done quite a few, but Sylvia and the team from Absolute Diversity are hearing from the staff, and she's feeding back every week around some of the themes, and we're starting to address some of that, and we will be taking quite a number of those actions back out to the organisation to say, this is what we've heard, this is what we think we should do. And also they're actually doing a survey at the moment, so we will get quite a richness of things coming in and how we manage that. I will say this, I will not tolerate, and nor will anyone else in my exec team, anyone that's abusive or racist towards my staff. And we have a system that allows us, if anyone does that, then it comes up to me or it comes up to one of the directors, etc. We don't tolerate that, and that's absolutely, that's a stance that we take. So from my point of view, it is about looking after the staff. I think one of the things that we need to go back to them and keep going back to them and saying, has this addressed some of the concerns that you've raised? But then what do we do next, and how can they help and support us doing that in the same as we have to help and support them?
Councillor Campbell?
Yes, I'm glad to hear you say that. That's zero tolerance towards, people questioning your professionalism or sort of racism towards your staff. So as it should be, as that's exactly how it should be. It's very positive that you have, is it absolute diversity, working with your staff and feedback. The only thing I would say is that it's really important that there's something tangible and constructive that comes out of that exercise, because a lot of the time consultants will be brought in, but a few years down the line, you kind of look back and you think, this is my experience in several large organizations, you look back and you think, actually, that was quite an exhaustive exercise to go through, but there's nothing really tangible or meaningful has happened in terms of change. So I think it'd be interesting for all of us in this committee to just see what comes out of that piece of work with that organization and how it can be implemented into some real change.
So I'm absolutely with you. I think this is not just a little project. And it's not going to be done in 3 months or 6 months. This is going to take a number of years, and we've said that as we've gone along. So it's really important that each step of the way we take that and we make sure it's sustainable change, not just a 5-minute wonder. And I think we've got a bit of track record, because it's the same with Patient First. We've actually incorporated the cultural transformation into one of our strategic initiatives. So it's really important that it's embedded into the organisation and not just a 5-minute wonder. I don't believe that this will it won't be one of those things. Because, as we've been clear to people, this is just the beginning.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Printer.
Thank you. I appreciate the report is about the CQC report in the ED department. How do we ensure, because you've got that pressure there and you've got the flow, you've mentioned the flow yourself, if you're not clearing the beds in the rest of the hospital, you can't move the people out of the ED. However, I've seen cases where people be seen to be rushed out of the wards because they're clinically fit, but then they join the back of the queue again in the ED less than 24 hours later. How are we ensuring, with all this focus on the ED department, that there is still focus on care in the rest of the hospital, that people aren't being rushed out of the wards to make that space to get that flow? And I get the pressures. It might not be corridors now, it might be around nurses' stations in the ED. That's not something you want to see, it's nothing I want to see. But how do we ensure that we keep the patient care in the rest of the hospital, not rushing people out when we've got these pressures in ED?
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes that does happen. So we try and get people out at the earliest safe opportunity to do so. And occasionally it doesn't go in the way that we wanted it to. We do monitor that quite closely, and there's work that's undertaken, particularly with the Community Trust, to look at cases where things like that have gone wrong and ensure that we can understand what that was about and learn lessons where we need to. It's important as well that we're communicating effectively with GPs, and there's been a lot of work done recently to ensure that that communication is happening in a timely way, so that that handover to GP care is there and the GPs can see what's the medication that's been prescribed for this patient, what was their journey through the hospital, what's the plan when they're discharged home, which is also to try and ensure that people have got the right support when they're back out into the community. I think, yeah, we just kind of need to acknowledge that sometimes it doesn't go quite as we plan to, but we're absolutely working on trying to minimise that and avoid those situations where people have unfortunately had to come back in.
So when it does go wrong, what do you do? Do you review that case individually? When it does, someone's come back within 24 hours, does that flag up for you? or somewhere as a service leader that takes that on board?
Yeah, it does. So that would be reported as an incident, and it would be investigated locally within the care group. If there's wider learning that we need to take from that, it would come up through the incident review group and then disseminated out to the wider organisation.
Can I just add, we do monitor our readmission rates, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it was the other day. Can't remember what it is. So, but it's not out of kilter where we think it would be. It's in normal range. So, but we do monitor it because that's really important, because if we're seeing people coming back, and so, but I can always get that sent through and have a look at it, yeah.
Thank you very much. I've got Sravuni and then Councillor Jackson, finish with Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to inform committee that actually whilst we're talking about a lot of changes happening within the hospital, Health Watch is actually starting engagement events once a month at the hospital, which will offer an independent body to actually listen to views from patients, carers and staff. So that should really supplement, the patient, friend and family kind of test within the hospital. But my question is about 160 no criteria to reside, because that is probably the challenge for the system. So is there anything being done, or what is being done within the system to address that?
So there are a number of things, and I'd probably look to my colleagues over the way there, but as working as a health and care partnership, I think there's been a number of initiatives that we have tried and actions that we've put in. I think the biggest thing that will make the difference, and actually been working with Jackie and the team in particular, around how those patients that are ready to go, how can we make sure that they are assessed in a timely fashion and then they get onto the destination where they need to be. I'll probably, if Jackie wants to comment on that, I'll probably let her do that. I think the other piece is around community services. So the initiative across the NHS, and it's actually the right one, is around the integrated neighbourhood teams. And we haven't got those set up here yet. And that's part of the work through the Health and Care Partnership that is so important to do. And so that incorporates not only sort of community services, ourselves, the council, but also the GPs. So it's really important that they're included in that, and a number of other agencies that you need to wrap around, certainly around sort of the PCNs. So that piece is really important that we get sorted this year, or at least start on that journey, because that will make a significant difference. Because when you look at the breakdown, the 160 was a peak, but we're normally running about 120 at any point in time. So the thing about this, it breaks it down. We have an obligation as an organisation around Pathway Zero. That means that's our responsibility for patients to go in a timely fashion. They don't need any other care or anything. Pathway 1, 2 and 3 is split between a number of colleagues and organisations. So the piece about that is about what do we do about those? How can we really streamline effectively about getting that discharge? But it does make a significant difference to us.
Thank you. And Jackie, do you want to come in quickly?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I mean, it is a challenge, particularly for people with really complex dementia. It's a struggle for us to get people out of the hospital quickly. So some of the initiatives that we're taking is that we've been working with a provider. I keep surprising Jane with things, but we've been working with a provider to look at step-down beds where we can move people out of the hospital. So particularly people with a learning disability or people who have autism. We've also been very focused about how we do our fee uplifts this year, because we've looked at what we've done historically, and by focusing that in certain areas, it means care homes can afford to work with us better. So we focus that on dementia homes, nursing dementia homes as well, and then been working as a system to introduce discharge to assess beds. But it is difficult. I wouldn't be lying to say if it wasn't, otherwise Jane wouldn't be talking about the numbers that she is quoting at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Crozier. Councillor Jackson, just reminding members to keep it on the CQC.
I feel like today is just following my CV, because I used to be the head night receptionist at Lewisham Hospital, so I know what A&E departments, what I used to call them A&E departments, go through, and the stresses that it's caused. But it goes onto the report about dignity and like in the corridors, and you say you've got a new facility. Just working in there, sometimes it's not the space, because you can put a curtain and you can hide it. The dignity can also come just with lack of staff. So I'm wondering whether we can build these extra rooms, but if we haven't got the staff to look after the patients, and that goes then on to staff morale, because everybody's stressed, and then the patients aren't getting the care they need. So I just wondered, in your opinion, do you think that we could, is staffing levels in ED a big problem as well? We could have healthcare assistants and then, just to round it up, I went to A&E on the 14th of February on Valentine's Day because I had problems with my kidney, and I was treated very well, and it was a brilliant service. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let Sarah talk about the staffing piece, because she's done a huge amount of work around that and what it was like in February 24, so that you've got the context really, because I think one of the things it comes, and it is what it is, but it comes over as if we weren't doing anything about the staffing at all. And I will say that is incorrect. But that doesn't detract from the fact that we've had gaps and things, but I'll let Sarah pick that up. Can I just, I'm not going to correct you, but we haven't built any other spaces. We haven't got any extra space. What we've done is used improvements within the organisation to reduce the corridor down. That's the first thing we've done, because that's the right thing to do. We still lodge in spaces that are called undesignated areas, so particularly in majors. So it's crowded in majors, but it is a different environment than being out in a very long corridor, which is a thoroughfare for everything as much as anything else. And so we've condensed ourselves, if you like. So we've done the things in a different way, but we haven't built anything extra. It's still the same size department as it was.
Actually, when I meant build, I meant make space. I didn't mean build as in bricks and mortar, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So the CQC have talked about staffing in the ED, and I think it's the way they've reflected it it's not necessarily accurate, but what we have done over the last year is undertake 2 safe staffing reviews using national methodology to look at what is the demand and the care needs of patients, and then what are the staff that we've got within the department. What that showed us is that our rotated staff is correct. So the amount of staff that we expect to be on every shift is the right level for the needs of the patients within the department. But what we had is gaps in the rota. So we've had an over-reliance on bank staff in particular. And that's really been the issue, because obviously with bank staff, you don't necessarily know that people are going to come or what have you. So we have had gaps. So we're now undertaking some work to fully recruit to ensure we've not got vacancies and we don't rely on bank staff. So there's a lot of recruitment, particularly for nurses, band 5 and band 6 nurses, that's happening at the minute. We've also had a look at our care support workers to make sure we've got that right and that they are there and able to support, particularly with privacy and dignity and with patients' hygiene needs. As I mentioned earlier, we've got new matrons. We've got 2 additional matrons that we've brought in to provide that operational leadership on the floor. And then the other thing that we're doing at the moment is that we're working with KMPT, the mental health provider, to ensure that we've got recruited substantive mental health staff within the department as well. So we've had permission to recruit 4 mental health staff. So it's a change to the way that we staff the department. And we're going to do that with KMPT. So it's likely that they'll actually recruit them and then they'll come and work in our department as a kind of rotation or a sort of shared resource model. And I think that's good because it means they'll be supported and have supervision within that mental health organisation. So that's a change as well. If we have gaps on the rota at the moment, and what we'll continue to do and what we were doing previously, is that we look at the staffing then across the site. So we prioritise ED because we know there's a lot of risk there, and we will adjust the staffing across the rest of the hospital and pull staff down from the wards to come and support in ED. That doesn't mean to say that we're always at the optimal staffing level, because obviously we're having to balance the risk there if we're pulling staff from across the wards. But that prioritisation of need for ED is absolutely there.
Could I just add one more point to that? I think just your point around the dignity and how the staff feel in particular. I don't want to take away from the fact that at any point in time our staff has felt really under pressure and were trying to find a way of expressing what, how it felt for them. And I hope now we've been able to, if they feel, under really great strain, they have options that they can use to be able to talk to somebody, get some action, whatever that is. But it doesn't detract from how they felt at any point in time, particularly over that February.
Thank you.
Thanks. I was just going to, it is bank staff coming in. When you're in a stressful situation, if you've got a team that work together all the time, they know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it just makes for a better running. But we don't live in an ideal world.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Finally, Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. Nobody likes to have somebody come in to look at what you're doing at short notice, and I'm sure, but it looks as if you positively seized on that opportunity to expand on what the problems are there. And you note 48 actions that are closed. Were they the 48 actions that CQC brought up, or is that your expanded version of that? I note that you've got 6 actions that have not yet been signed off, 2 on track and 4 on waiting to be evidenced and approved. So it kind of looks as if you're at the end of that process. Are you, in fact, at the end of that process, and what happens after that? Does CQC come back in and have another look and sign it off and it's all over? Whereabouts are we in the process? When can we say to the public, that this has been announced to the public, and we can say now it's been addressed and we're moving forward?
Thank you. So the methodology that the CQC are using now is one where they don't make recommendations. So previously, when you had an inspection, you would get a list of must do, should do recommendations, and you would build your action plan on that. The methodology that they're using now doesn't do that. It just tells you what the judgments are, what the findings. So we built the action plan against what they'd found, thinking about what we thought we needed to do in order to make those improvements. And then there's been that oversight with the CQC. So we've been sharing the action plan with them, sharing it with the ICB and with NHSE. I think today we're up to version 49 of the action plan. So every week we have a task and finish group, and we sit down with staff from the department, from the quality team. I join those meetings almost every week. I absolutely prioritise it when I can get there, and others in leadership roles as well, to go through and update what's the progress this week. So we're absolutely tracking what we're doing against all of them. For the ones that we've not yet closed, there's 2 that need IT changes, and they're tricky to make. So we're working with the clinical record provider to get those changes implemented. The other ones, we've done the action, but we're waiting to ensure that we've absolutely got the evidence that those changes have embedded. So we're using a lot of that audit data, the matrons checks, that kind of thing, and then going back and auditing if we need to, looking again to see what's happening, to be absolutely confident that the changes that we've planned have not only happened, but they're having the desired effect and that they're embedded within the department. We've got a second page, if you like, to the improvement plan. So the initial actions were the ones built on that initial improvement plan, and then the feedback that we got from CQC. We've continued to build a second page of the action plan, which is new guidance that's come out from NHS England, for instance, on undesignated areas for care and how you ensure that they're safe. new guidance that's come out around clinical interventions, etc., the front door model. So as things are changing and improving and we're receiving that guidance, or if there have been incidents and we've got learning from incidents, we're continuing to build that action plan. So when we get to the end of the CQC bit, that won't be it for the actions. We'll keep going to ensure that we're continuing to drive improvement within the department. In terms of the CQC coming back in, they will come back in. They're not going to make an appointment. They'll just come back in at some point and do another unannounced inspection to have a look and see what's happening in the department on that day. Before the inspection happened, CQC were getting quite a number of concerns raised with them, both from our staff, but also from patients who'd received care within the department. And much of the content of the report is based on the feedback that CQC had from staff and from patients. I have those really regular meetings with CQC, and one of the things that I always check in with them about is what's happening around the concerns that they're receiving. Yesterday I spoke to CQC and they confirmed again that the level of concerns that they were getting isn't just not there at the moment. It's down to what they would expect for any other ED department. So that we're taking some comfort from that. I think the fact as well that our patient feedback has improved significantly over the last year. The themes within that feedback have changed as well now. So the positive feedback that we receive, which is 75% of the patients that tell us about their experience of care, patients are telling us about the professional care that they've received, about the staff who were compassionate and met their needs. The negative feedback tends to be about long waits within the department. So that's the real clear theme that comes through. So I'm not quite sure if I've answered your question, but yeah, in essence, they will be back.
It's really just to see where I think they assessed you as with the different levels of green to red. When do they redo that? When can you say you're through? I can see that it's an ongoing process, and I guess that's a good thing for it to be ongoing. But when do we get back to that kind of level that's acceptable?
It's difficult for us to really say when CQC will make that judgment. I think the department probably does still need requirement because of the level of challenge that we've got. So even with all the improvements that we've made, there's still work that we need to do. The fact that we are having too many patients that spend 12 hours or more in the department, I think even that in itself means that we need to make improvements to get things right for our patients. When CQC come back in, they'll be looking in particular at the warning notice and ensuring that we've made those changes that we said we were going to do and that we've been telling them about all year. That may not change the overall rating of the department. It depends when they do another full inspection. So they could just come in and do quite a targeted review. So it's difficult to say, but hopefully the experience of people that come through will give some assurance as well for all of you that patients are also receiving good care, as Councillor Jackson did. So it's good to hear about that. And most of our patients do receive good care.
So just quickly follow up on that. Are you managing that kind of connection with the public? How are you getting that sort of information out to the public? Because I guess they're looking for an end to it and another report. Is that being vocalised in any way?
So we do engagement, particularly with our members and our governors. So we're talking a lot there about what's happening. It's difficult to really give out messages about how the CQC report will be updated because that's kind of out of our control, but we can talk to the public about the improvements that we're making, and we absolutely are doing that and will continue to do that. And I think reflecting back what our patients are saying is a good way to do that.
Thank you. Councillor
Just quickly,
yeah, through the chairs. Is this the last comment you're going to go back on?
I was going to comment. I was going to say the public perceive that it's happened on the 5th of March this year. They don't perceive that it happened then. So for them, it's a different situation. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair.
I agree. I think we've had that conversation already that even that's a year back, they think it was now. They think it was, you're right, Councillor Crozier. Councillor Lane, finally, for you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my question relates to the use of bank staff, because I know a lot of support workers who work within your trust, but it seems like most of them prefer to work as bank staff, even though they've worked with you for so many years. I don't know if there is any reason why they prefer to work as bank staffs with you. Some of them have been there for over 10 years, but they still prefer to be bank staff, so I don't know why. And what also I've learned from some of them is that most of them, when they go to further their education to become practicing nurse, they prefer to move to other trusts, even though they were working as support staff within the Medway NHS trust. Once they go and get their nursing qualification, they prefer to go to other trusts. And some of the reason being that it's difficult for them to rise to Band 6 if they are with Medway Trust. So they will prefer to go to other places to rise up quickly. I don't know whether you are aware of that, because if you can...
Just briefly on that one, Jane, if you can, because
I'll
it's
be
more
really
CQC.
quick. Yeah, so very quickly, one of the things that we've seen over, I'll let Sarah talk about the bank staff piece, but our vacancy rate has significantly dropped. We've done a lot of work over the last few years around the vacancy, and it was sitting about 3.5%. It was much higher than that. If you look back 3 years ago, it was 10%. So we've done a lot of work around reducing our vacancy rate. And the other piece that we've concentrated on over the last year or so is the turnover. So actually, we've significantly reduced our turnover. So I think, you know, there's elements about our permanent staff that we are keeping and recruiting into difficult areas within the trust. Do you want to say anything about bank?
Yeah, thank you. So a fairly sizable proportion of the bank staff that work in ED are actually ED staff who do additional shifts, so they're part of the team there. Some people do prefer to just work on bank, and that's because of the flexibility that it offers them to work in different areas and also to work the shifts that they choose. We are trying to reduce our reliance on bank staff and to work with substantive rosters, and the vacancy rate being so low allows us to do that. One of the ways that we are trying to entice bank staff to come and work in substantive roles is by offering flexible working. And certainly for the CSWs, our pipeline of CSW starters is always predominantly people who want to work part-time, want to work particular shifts. And we are really spending a lot of focus on ensuring that we're able to accommodate that for people, that they can join teams and still work flexibly in substantive roles within the hospital. So that is an area that we're really looking at. Within the ED, the turnover is really quite low. It's just over 1% turnover. So we retain staff generally within the department. And staff are internally promoted. So the work we're doing at the minute to recruit Band 5s and Band 6s, many of those Band 6s will be the Band 5s that are currently working there, which will give us extra recruitment to do. But that's the right thing, to ensure that we're rewarding staff and recognising training and progression, etc. We also tend to retain our students. Most of the students that train with us stay with us. For the last few student cohorts, we've done an offer to all of them that they will have a job with the trust, and then we've worked out where the vacancies are as they're completing their training to make that offer. So generally speaking, we do retain our students as to become qualified staff with us. The turnover within ED is really low, as I say. So whilst some people may go to other places, you know, to seek other opportunities, mostly we are hanging on to our staff and keeping them within the hospital.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Naing. Look, I'm just going to finish. I'm like Councillor Hamadishi and you, Jane, you know, and you said I've nursed in wards, and it's disappointing to see, and it's disappointing for everyone, I know. And I was going to ask you the questions around, I think you've answered it really well. I think you've answered the questions tonight about what checks are now in place to make sure we're not having people offering pads to people, because that can never happen. We know that can never happen in any scenario. And the comments in there about there's not clear processes in place. I've been there. I've seen the improvements. I know there is process. You have your huddles. You have those meetings. And you've answered, Jane, already most of that tonight, but we've had a meeting as well about this. I suppose I'm going to call out the elephant in the room here, which is the CQC. Okay? The hospital made mistakes. There was elements that should not have happened, and you've admitted that there's still work to do, which there is, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But for the CQC to come in and do an inspection and pick up elements, including the privacy, dignity and respect elements and medicine management, and not say nothing after their inspection is a disgrace. I'm sorry. I just don't, and I'm happy to say it. You know, there's been lots of bodies that are being dismantled, as we've heard today, and I think that's another one that should be, because we need good quality, we need good standards in our hospital services. But anyone that keeps you waiting a year for a report, or keeps the residents waiting a year for a report, it's not fair on anybody. And Councillor Campbell was right. Not fair on your staff. We've all been there, and all your staff reading Facebook and reading the messages and reading what's going on, comments under press statements. And the press statements are right, but the comments, and Councillor Crozier is correct, they think it's now, and then you hear stories about now and last week and this week, which you will get those comments. It could have been dealt with. A year later is just not right. And you know, I think we, you know, I'm going to ask Terry, and I will speak to Councillor White at the same time, and that I think we need to do a letter from this scrutiny panel to CQC about their failure in that, because it really puts people at risk, including staff. And you know, the comments are from around the staff, and I did see a lot of those racist comments. It's just not acceptable. A lot of them, the staff members that are in your hospital from around the world are doing a fantastic job on them wards. And to see some of those comments on those online and stuff was just disgraceful. And why people tolerate it and why everyone just jumps in and has fun with it, I'm disgusted with. So I'm really glad to hear you have that zero tolerance. But I suppose I'm going to, and you're lucky, I'm not asking you loads of questions, I'm making my final statement now, is that, look, you're on a battle, aren't you? You do a great job, but you're battling because the hospital is too small for the population you're serving. And you're doing some great stuff with trying to get the hubs and trying to get the other bits, and you're doing some good stuff with healthy living centres we're here in a moment, and getting the scanners in and stuff. You're always going to be up against it because it's too small. And I think it's about time that, you know, the ICB and the government, and I know we've got things going to be happening soon, people need to come and see that a good hospital where there's good staff needs better premises and bigger premises and better provisions to resource our ever-growing needs, because we're all accessing. You go into your ED any day, it's packed out, and many of those can't access GPs, and many of those can't access other services, and you guys do a good job. Yes, and I know you dealt with some staff. There was failures on that day, and we all recognise that, and I think the members have been brilliant tonight. I hope you found that they've given you very constructive comments. But we need to, Medway Hospital needs to be recognised as being too small for our population, and something needs to be invested and done about it. Because I can see, we've been in CQC, haven't we? Because you've got fantastic departments in your hospital. That, you know, I spoke to someone today that was getting fantastic cancer care today. You know, fantastic departments, but that's all forgotten because of this report. And I don't think that should be allowed. And I think, yeah, we call you out because we need to call you out. Of course we do. And privacy and dignity is number one. But we're not going to call out all those staff that deserve better. And you know, the hundreds of lives you still save on a daily or weekly basis. I think we can't forget that. So I know it's unusual for me to be very, but I do feel that we need to do something. If members agree in that, if the Vice Chair puts that in, we need to do a letter to CQC, and I do feel maybe something else needs to be done about calling people around to talk about investing in the hospital that needs that investment. I hope that's okay for me to say. Vice Chair. Or Jane, did you want to come back? You don't have to come back if you don't want to, but Vice Chair.
Just thank you for your support, really. But yeah, thanks.
I move that the committee notes the report.
And add on the bit, is that members in agreement with the letter to CQC and all that? Is that okay? Okay, good. And Terry, we do that probably with the Vice Chair and opposition spokes as well as Councillor Crozier. Thank you. Is that seconded, members? And agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for your time. Members, I'm just going to ask you, you know I don't normally, you wouldn't know this, Councillor Perfect, but normally I'll finish by, I'm very good on finishing here. I'm going to shift because Councillor Nang, you and Councillor Perfect are actually on the committee, I'm going to move I'm going to move the other members' item first, if that's okay. I'm going to move the members' item from Strood first, then the Healthy Living Centre item, and then the pharmacy item. Is that okay? We're just going to switch it. And I'm going to give people do people want to just 2 minute comfort break, just 2 minute comfort break, and Councillor Field and Councillor Van Dyke, if you'd like to come forward. Okay, we're going to go to item 10 now, which is the members' item, Strood Healthy Living Centre and Primary Care Provision. I've got Councillor Van Dyke and Councillor Field. Welcome this evening. Would you like to do your representations, please?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the aim of this item is to seek to move forward with a healthy living centre for Strood. Currently, there are 4 healthy living centres in Medway at Lordswood, Rochester Community Health Centre, Balmoral Gardens Health Centre and Rainham Healthy Living Centre. Healthy living centres provide patients with a range of services, advice and support, including maternity, mental health and chronic illness, as well as preventive advice and support. And there is no such provision on the west side of Medway, that is Strood and the Peninsula, apart from the 5 medical practices there. We have the Keystone Centre in Gun Lane, as well as Gun Lane Medical Centre, which simply incorporates GP surgeries and pharmacy. And COVID inoculations are provided periodically from the latter. I was looking at stats of population and I couldn't get anything absolutely up to date, but the population of Medway in 2022 was just under 290,000 and growing. And in 2019, which was the only stat I could find in Strood, was 2019, 40,000 people. And with housing development, this figure will have increased, but amounts likely to be in the region of 15 to 20% of the overall population figure for Medway. Healthy life expectancy in Medway is around 64 for women and 61 for men. And pressures on GPs are huge. This can be best prevented by encouraging healthy living with advice and well-being opportunities. The main contributors to lower life expectancy are circulatory and respiratory diseases and cancer. And further, there is a deficit in the identification of and provision for mental health services. For the lower age groups, astonishingly, for children aged 4 to 5, almost a third of them are overweight and even obese. And for 10 to 11-year-olds, 44.2%, according to stats, which is appalling. Healthy living centres can and will provide a wide range of services, such as podiatry, lymphedema, speech and language, dentistry, physiotherapy, district nurses, dermatology, ENT, ultrasounds, phlebotomy, clinical assessment, advice and treatment for arrhythmia, diabetes, cardiology, dietitians, heart failure, continence, respiratory, clinical assessment, anticoag, wound therapy, ulceration and primary care, breastfeeding advice, and so on, with the relevant equipment, advice, and support required. Largely, the emphasis for healthy living centres is on early intervention, which is key, and preventative work in support of patients. And these are services that are at best limited or unavailable from overstretched GP services or hospitals, and should be provided in a welcoming environment at an appropriate pace, and can delay or curtail further deterioration in the health of users. So I hope that these services can be made equally available to the west side of Medway as soon as possible.
Councillor Field. Thank you, Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Van Dyke, for giving the context of why this is such a critical issue and why we've decided to raise an urgent matter tonight. Strood has been long promised a healthy living centre. It's obviously clear from what Councillor Van Dyke has set out that there is an urgent need and requirement for it. And it was great that £6 million was promised from this and had been protected by the Clinical Commissioning Group to develop this healthy living centre. It really would have been given a great boost to our wonderful town. But unfortunately, we haven't got the answers. We've got In the response here tonight, it says reasons unknown, reasons unknown. And actually, Strood deserves better. Our residents in Strood, an area that could really benefit from a healthy living centre, an area that has many health inequalities as set out there, an area that has many challenges that require well-rounded healthcare and a system that works for the benefits. And in our questions, 4 questions that we put in this members' item tonight, firstly, what has happened to that £6 million that was protected for Strood Healthy Living Centre? Has the funding been returned to government, and if so, why? What plans are in place to ensure that Strood will get a healthy living centre, especially with leases and existing surgeries expiring in 2026? And what steps are being taken to improve pharmacy provision in Strood, ensuring that local residents have reliable access to essential medications and advice? These are questions we're getting asked every day. And it's really good to see the progress that is happening, and it's going to be great to see the James William Healthy Living Centre delivered in Chatham. But actually, Strood, as a town, as the only town in Medway that doesn't have a healthy living centre, kind of deserves a bit more respect, and it deserves a roadmap that clearly states when we're going to get that investment. So, you know, I'm looking forward to hearing from colleagues tonight and fellow councillors on this committee. And we thank you for taking this as members' item. But we really want to see clarity here to make sure that residents in Strood get the health care that they deserve.
Thank you, Councillor Field, and thank you, Councillor Van Dyke. Who's responding to this? Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Field, and thank you, Councillor Van Dyke. I don't know, this is the first time I've had a member's question, so I'd like to just be guided. We've got the paper here in terms of the response. Would you like me to just give some headline comments from that?
If you want to add anything on because obviously members are going to ask questions as well, but yeah,
okay,
anything
fine.
you want to add on.
Thank you. I recognise, so first of all, I recognise that Strood was given £6 million back in 2017 alongside the Chatham Healthy Living Centre when it was requested by the CCG. As somebody that wasn't part of, and most of the estate staff within the ICB were not part of the Medway CCG previously, I can't answer why that development wasn't then taken forward until the ICB came into existence. So I apologise that I can't do that, but I don't know why it wasn't. What I can say was that when I came in and when the estates team was established under Kent and Medway ICB, we then worked as hard as we could to make sure that the funding, the totality of the funding, was made available and stayed within Medway. We were under significant pressure from NHS England for them to take that money back because they could not see any progress being developed. We persuaded NHS England to extend the deadline from 2023 to 2024 for that money to be used, and that was then used for, as you say, the James Williams Centre that's currently being used at the moment. That doesn't help the people of Strood, and I understand that completely. I recognise that Strood doesn't have a healthy living centre, and that is something that we are, in terms of the healthcare facilities, we are committed to making sure that they have the right healthcare facilities in Strood and also on the Hoo Peninsula, which is adjacent to that as well. We're working really closely with members of the council in terms of the planning team, the health and wellbeing team on the local plan, and we met with them only this week to actually talk about Strood, the Hoo Peninsula and other areas of Medway in terms of what healthcare facilities might be needed as part of the local plan and that increase in population. And as soon as we get the next, and I apologise because you might think I'm fobbing you off, but I'm absolutely not. When we get the next iteration of the local plan, which we expect to be in probably the next 4 to 6 weeks, we will be able to do a proper assessment that will be able to identify what are the needs and where might those facilities be within the Strood and Hoo Peninsula in terms of extra facilities, call that a healthy living centre, call that an integrated community hub, call it a number of things. But that's the piece of work we're working on. The second part of that, which is more difficult, is then identifying capital funding to make that happen. We will look for developer contributions for that, and that's all part of the local plan, and we will be really clear on that, and we will work with Department of Health and Social Care, as it's now going to be called, in terms of trying to secure additional capital funding. But we will be in line with every other integrated care system in the country fighting for that additional funding. So I'll pause there in terms of the questions around the Healthy Living Centre, what's happened for Strood. We may well come on to the pharmacy question in just a second. But I do recognise that's a priority. I do recognise that you haven't, that members of the residents of Strood and the surrounding area haven't got a Healthy Living Centre in terms of the facilities that are available elsewhere within the Medway towns, and that is something that hopefully we can put right in the future.
Thanks, Mark. Members. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. As a Strood councillor, I can tell you that every month I have a group of ladies in their 80s that come in with letters from the MP at the time saying the money has been allocated, it states quite clearly there will be the money for a Healthy Living Centre in Strood. And that's the last I heard, and they come in every single month to me for answers, and I don't have any answers, and it seems like you don't have any answers to where that money went for me to take back to my residents.
No, I can tell you where it went. I'm very clear on that. The funding went to the Chatham Healthy Living Centre, as in the James Williams Healthy Living Centre. So in order for one of the two Healthy Living Centres to be built, the money was pulled together. So the £6 million that was originally allocated to Strood back in 2017 under the CCG was pulled with the £8 million that was for Chatham Healthy Living Centre, and it was then allocated to what is now a £15 million build in the Chatham Healthy Living Centre, or the James Williams Healthy Living Centre. The alternative to that was because neither scheme was viable on the 8 million and the 6 million on its own at 2022 prices, the alternative to that was that the total £14 million was going back to central government.
Councillor Printer.
Can I just come back?
Go on,
just quickly. Was at that time, because obviously I wasn't here, was that decision made public? Because I'm just worried about my residents and why they didn't know about it. I'm not saying it wasn't, I just...
What, you're saying it wasn't made public? Well, it was discussed with Medway Council members because we did a... Sorry.
I thought Councillor Jackson was saying was the decision not to fund Strood at the time.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Not the James William. I'm talking about in the CCG days.
So, in the CCG days,
yeah.
I can't answer that.
No, and I'm going to say it wasn't, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
That's so I have to go back to them and give them
it wasn't what you're talking about now. Mike, yeah. Councillor Printer.
Point of order, Chair. I didn't understand what went on there. Councillor Jackson asked a question, and it didn't seem to me that the question was answered.
No, it was. It was about whether it was known at the time when the CCG was there that they were going to delay and not run with the Strood Healthy Living Centre. And I said, no, it wasn't known at the time. That's what Councillor Jackson was asking. Not James Williams one, the Strood Healthy Living Centre.
That wasn't the question that I asked, that I heard Councillor Jackson make. She asked whether the move of the money from Strood to Chatham was made public.
No, are you talking about James William or are you talking about the one before, Councillor Jackson?
I'm saying, so what I'm trying to get clear is my residents have got a letter saying there's going to be a Healthy Living Centre in Strood, and they were never told anything else as far as I was concerned. And I would feel that if that money that was said that was allocated to them was then used somewhere else, that should have been made public.
So I agree with that. That decision was taken before the ICB, so I don't disagree with you. There is a commitment to provide facility. We need to do the needs assessment, but there is a commitment and there is an understanding that Strood and the Hoo Peninsula doesn't have the facilities that it needs in the future. So there's a commitment to work with the council in terms of undertaking the needs assessment and to work what we've currently got versus what we need in the future, and then develop a business case for that. What we will then need to do after that is identify further capital money for Strood, because that original capital funding is not now available.
Councillor Printer.
Thank you. Just a few questions. One's very quick, yes or no. In 2017, that money that was awarded, would that have been enough? You said not enough in 2022, but was that enough to build them, both of them facilities in 2017?
I can't say outright because I wasn't in there in 2017. It would have been very remiss of an organisation to bid for money and then think that they would need additional money on top of that. And they got the money that they bid for, as far as I'm aware. So I am assuming that they were working on the basis that £6 million would have built a healthy living centre in Strood.
Okay, and normally, so through the bid process, you bid for an amount of money to build based on a case study, plans, etc. How long would you expect to bring that forward? Well, you know, I know you can't comment why there was that 5-year delay. And my other fear is that on paper, Strood has been allocated the money to build a healthy living centre. All right, it was used elsewhere, but on paper, Strood has had money to build a healthy living centre. So I would fear putting in a bid in future against other areas. Those people might go, who are making them decisions, you've had your money, but you didn't deliver. So is that a fear of you that we might not get the capitalisation going forward because Strood on paper has had its money? It's wrote out to its residents saying you're getting a healthy living centre and it's not come forward. Thank you.
So, sorry, I can't remember your first question. Your first question? 2 years. So on average, in terms of considering a business case and considering a site for development and subject to the money being available, in terms of an outline business case, a full business case and sign-off is on average about 2 years. In terms of your question around Strood, and therefore, because Strood was originally awarded £6 million, would others now think, well, it got it £6 million, and therefore we're not going to allocate it again? I would hope not, but I can't guarantee that. I'm not in the view, in the business of determining what the centre might say. We would put a business case in if we felt that there was a need for that. We would absolutely put a business case in to develop something.
Councillor Crozier.
Yeah, just following on from Councillor Jackson, then, can I ask then, who made the decision to withdraw the money from Strood and put it to Chatham? Was it ICB or was it Medway Council?
It was the NHS. Well, it was the CCG previously, now the ICB. So it was the NHS. We did talk to Medway Council about that, but that was on the basis of developing an acceptable business case for what is the James Williams Healthy Living Centre, recognising that Medway Council have also contributed a small element towards that.
So you moved the money from Strood to Chatham after talking to Medway Council?
As part, not after, but as part of that conversation.
Before or during the time?
I don't know. I can't remember.
You're talking to Medway Council for their opinion on moving the money? You said you talked to Medway Council and then you moved the money?
Yeah, so so what we had to do was, in developing the business case that goes to NHS England to sign off the £15 million, what we had to do was we had to identify to NHS England and the Department of Social Care, where were we going to get the money from? So as part of the business case, we said we would get £8 million from Chatham, we would get £6 million from Strood, and we would get circa 1.x million from Medway Council. That went in the business case at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, and early in the autumn of 2023, that business case was approved.
I'm still unclear who's made the decision. It sounds to me as if Medway Council have made the decision.
No, let me be clear. Medway Council didn't make that decision whilst they were involved in identifying how the totality of that pot was going to be made. It was an NHS, so it was an ICB, previous CCG ICB proposal to NHS England to transfer the allocation from Strood to Chatham.
So I guess it begs the question that the £8 million wasn't sufficient for Chatham, so you needed extra money, and that's where the extra money came from, at the demise of the Strood residents.
Given the 6 years that had taken place from the original allocation of the funding to the business case being approved, yes.
Yeah.
So Councillor Crozier, I think I'm going to be able to help you with this here, because it's a confusion. And Mike, you know, this isn't personal, right? But I'm going to have a little go, okay? Because you wouldn't expect anything different. But I can't understand in the days we're in now, where you can do freedom of information and everything else, When the CCG closed down, they didn't burn all their papers, right? Nothing was, they didn't just throw it all in a fire and disappear and run, did they? Because many CCG colleagues are in the ICB, okay? And I know you wasn't around, I'm just saying, they are. And when I read the report and it says reasons unknown for delay, there must have been reasons why they delayed that. There must have been reasons why they delayed that. And I think we need to find out what those reasons are. And Mike, you'll know there'll be vaults somewhere or something, but we need to find out what those reasons are. I also find it shocking. Now, none of us around this table are saying that Chatham doesn't deserve a healthy living centre. Of course it does, and it's great that it's James Williams. Of course it is. But there's questions unanswered around what Councillor Crozier and Councillor Prentice are asking. It's right. Strood was promised this healthy living centre in 2017. And it was delayed for whatever reason, and the residents lost out. And fantastic for the Chatham residents, but Strood are still losing out and still don't have what they deserve. And you know, and there are inaccuracies which we are going to take away from here. It's better to take it out of here. But there's a lot of inaccurate comments around. You have had relocate applications. You've had the Gun Lane doctors telling you that building's in disrepair and there's cracks. The partners upstairs and there's all cracks in the walls. I've been there. I've been there with Lauren Edwards. We've been to see it. So you have had those applications. There has been dialogue going on between your department as well. Mike, you can tell me it's not yours, but it's one. There has been dialogue going on, and during that dialogue, as Councillor Jackson has said, and it's definitely not you, Mike, but during dialogue with officers from the ICB, people have said the money was returned and the money's gone back to government. And then finally, during this members' item, we find out that it hasn't just disappeared into the ether, it's been used on another project, which at least accountability is there, we know where the money is. But we have areas with healthy living centres, and Strood is one of those areas where there's deprivation that needs that healthy living centre. And I know sites have been shown or whatever. That's different. That's got to be local plan, and you need to look at that. But from a community point of view, as the councillors are putting it very clearly here tonight, yet again, a community has been failed, not by you, Mike, but been failed and forgotten. And that is Strood and who. You know, it's totally been forgotten with regards to having access. And I don't think they deserve a small little hub or a small little what's name. I think they deserve a healthy living or a brand, whatever they're going to call it in the future. They deserve a facility, and I don't think you'd disagree with that. They deserve, you can't magic the money out of thin there, I know. But I do feel that whether we take it out of here on a round table, and it's ops folks and the councillors, and, you know, I'm happy and with you guys, I do feel we need to have that discussion around the legitimacy of that money being moved along and chugged along and plugged in somewhere, then taken out 3 years later. And we need to have some transparency. And we haven't, and we do resolve this transparency when we meet normally, especially out of here. We need to find out what went wrong, because rightly so, the councillors' residents, including both sides, you know, all people in the Strood and Who area, will feel let down, and they hear that tonight, they're going to feel let down, because, you know, we all know we're pushing out pharmacy first stuff, we're pushing out, you know, all of our council services and stuff, yet we know that there isn't many places to be able to do it in the Strood area. The facilities, you know that, the facilities are that we struggle, don't we, to do that. So I feel really badly for the residents of Strood and Who tonight. I feel we've let them down with regards to not having the health that they... Councillor Van Dyke, I will let you come back in briefly. Come in.
I just want to make a quick remark, because I think this is all about early intervention. Those services are about early intervention. So if that money isn't made available for that early intervention to take place, the cost of healthcare for the residents of Strood is going to be considerably more going forward. So it doesn't make sense at all.
And also, Mike, we've had this discussion as well. we've just heard from the hospital, you know, we've got a really good healthy living centre in Rochester now, where, you know, where we've got the scanners put in and we've got the ones in Sheppey or wherever it is now. But, you know, the more that we can make facilities available outside as well for that early intervention, the better it is on the pressure on the hospital. You know this anyway. I'm teaching to take eggs really. But I think we'll take it out and we can have a discussion away from committee with the councillors involved and stuff, because I think we need to. And Councillor Crozier and Councillor Wiley as well, and Vice Chair, because I feel there might be questions you need to know about that, the money movements and who made. But Mike's been very upfront and said it wasn't the council that made that; it was the NHS.
I didn't get the date that the money was moved. Does the date the money was moved correspond or coincide with the withdrawal of the HIF fund?
I don't know about that.
Was it 2020, 2022?
No, I mean the money was with the NHS. It wasn't with the council. The money was with the NHS from 2017, 2016. Because I was on this committee, I remember they got it awarded, and what's his Stuart come along and was telling us that they've got the money, and whoopee, it's great for because remember I've been on here since 2015. But then that money sat somewhere and done something for a long time. And then what Mike is saying, Councillor Crozier, is that that money sat there and it was a choice of either giving it back to government or using it on a project.
And also, you're including the Hoo Peninsula in that, but I'm not so sure whether the money was allocated to Strood and the Hoo Peninsula, or whether it was Strood and now we're including the Hoo Peninsula, because I think if we were to consider putting a healthy living centre in Strood, for the peninsula, it wouldn't be close enough to the peninsula. It would need to be, you know, in the centre of the peninsula somewhere I
think I'm just being fair here tonight and saying Strood, and because other councillors have talked about Strood and Who, and whether it's a hub and spoke approach, I don't know. But I do know Strood was offered the money for, you know, for that facility, and they should have that facility, and they haven't. So. Let's take this out, if that's okay with members. Let's take this out. Terry and I will come back with a recommendation. We'll take it off of here, and we can have that round table and discuss what some of the facts around it. Is that okay, Vice Chair? Just your mic, Leah.
Just wanted to really quickly check. I don't know if in that business case we spoke about what site, but is that, if this was 2017, is the site and all the rest of the business case still available, or is it going to have to be straight back? Okay.
No, it's not the site. So there wasn't the site. The money was subject to a lot more workup. So the money wasn't guaranteed. It was allocated, but subject to business cases and everything else that needed to then be submitted.
Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the comments from the ICB in response to the members' item. It has also been agreed that the discussion about what happened to the funding between 2017 and 2022 when it was reallocated away from Strood is taken away from this committee for discussion between the relevant councillors, the ICB and Medway Council officers, so that it can be investigated properly.
Yeah, we'll organise that and we'll speak to Mike and we'll organise that with Terry. Thank you, Vice Chair, that's really good. Is that seconded? Seconded. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you so much, Councillor Van Dyke and Councillor Field, and we'll be in touch shortly with regards to the next steps on that. Thank you for that. Mike, can I go straight in for you? Because Terry will kill me. I wasn't allowed to do it all in one. So can you do your item now, please?
So it's really interesting, of course, because we're talking about the need for a healthy living centre, and we've got 4 healthy living centres that are really underutilised in Medway. We mustn't forget that. So they're as per the report, they're predominantly underutilised because of increase in service charges again, which is outside of our control, but I am desperately working with Community Health Partnerships, who are the head leasee, in terms of trying to address that and renegotiate a lease or renegotiate terms and conditions so that we can encourage more people to use those healthy living centres. Rainham is particularly the most vacant, if I can call that, the most underutilised healthy living centre, and you'll see from the paper there that we are starting a piece of work looking at how we best use Rainham Healthy Living Centre, potentially using some of the capital funding that is available, small amounts of capital funding from Community Health Partnerships, to adjust the internal makeup of Rainham Healthy Living Centre to make it more usable for clinical services, with a view of Medway Foundation Trust, and we heard earlier, and you mentioned earlier about needing a new hospital. The chances of that in the very near future are low, but I absolutely recognise the view that we do need a new hospital. Part of the left shift and part of the key work that we're talking with Medway Foundation Trust at the moment is how might we actually use some of their services be better used within the healthy living centres and with Medway Community Healthcare as well. So we're actively doing that piece of work now. I was speaking to their estates director only this afternoon in terms of how we progress that and what we might be able to do in terms of those services. We're looking at using Rainham as a blueprint then as to how we particularly focus then in Rochester and then Balmoral Gardens, sorry, not Rochester, Lordswood, and then Balmoral Gardens, and less so Rochester because Rochester's getting the CDC anyway. In terms of, sorry, other comments there, I'm happy to, one of the things that I'm happy to do is, and I think I touched on last year when I brought a wider paper on the estate strategy, was to talk about actually how we might have Medway Council, the voluntary sector, also using those healthy living centres. And we've touched on it with the voluntary sector, but we've not really progressed it at the moment. I'm happy to work with local councillors if they've got ideas in terms of how we might do that, because I'd like to encourage voluntary sector and see how we can do that, make it affordable for them, recognising that they don't necessarily pay the same rates as a foundation trust or somewhere else. But we as an ICB, as you'll see in the paper, currently pay void costs anyway. I'd rather not be paying the void costs at all. But if we've got to pay void costs, I'd rather do it to underwrite some people to come in and use the centres rather than us just wasting money paying for empty space to a landlord. So this is work in train. It's nowhere near where I want it to be in terms of improved utilisation. We are making slow progress in terms of bookable space, but I'm not happy with the progress that we're making in terms of increasing the utilisation of those 4 healthy living centres.
Mike, can I say that the report was good because I remember you did say to us before it was something that you wanted to concentrate on and you have, and you've recognised, and I know that I'm sure Rainham colleagues would comment in a moment, but I know one of the biggest things is the costs and the service charge, etc. And I know hopefully we'll get there one day. Can I just check the James Williams Centre won't have that onerous PFI stuff on it, will it? It's just the ones that we've got, the older ones.
No, because we've had the capital money
to
pay it.
Yeah.
So actually all of the rules are in our court.
Good.
Our head leasee is the community provider.
Yeah.
They won't be, we've got caps and collars in place in terms of service charges.
Good.
So we won't have the issues of inflation like we've had with the PFI schemes that we've got with those 4.
And that's a great way forward, isn't it? Yeah. Members, Councillor Perfect.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Dave, Mike, for this report. Sorry, it's a long day. And I'm really pleased to hear about the pilot project here, because I know we've spoken before about the situation at Rainham, and the Chair's completely correct. I mean, it's a completely ridiculous situation we've ended up in with this massive void space, you know, the significant, you know, waste that we've got effectively in that centre, which I know frustrates residents as well, right? Because they look at it and go, we've got this fantastic facility here, we've got half of it sitting empty most of the time, and yet we're still having to go to pretty poor facilities elsewhere in Rainham in order to access GPs. And then just in, so there's obviously that piece, and obviously we've got the wider piece of the fact that the PCN moved out and moved into the Millennium Centre, which was completely ridiculous because we couldn't get to a resolution on the situation surrounding the service charge. I mean, it's just total nonsense. So, I mean, I'm pleased that you are, you know, brought this pilot project forward and you're looking at it. I'm just interested, you made reference to the fact that you're talking about to the head leasee and you're having those sort of conversations. I'm just interested in terms of what their view is on this, because I know in the past their view has been pretty much a typical financier view of basically, well, we get the money, whether it's full or not, and we don't really care, good luck. So I'm just interested to see if there's been any change of tone on that and if there's any sort of change of strategy that you're going to apply to that moving forward. And then just on the wider piece, you mentioned about bringing in the council or some in the voluntary sector to use that space. I'm just interested in terms of how you would be going about offering that, and if there's any way of, you know, you consult with the public about that, or what would be the sort of mechanism of that, because I can think of a number of organisations that might be interested in that piece, particularly in Rainham. So I'm just interested in what that sort of thinking and process might look like, and a timeline if possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the head leasee is called Community Health Partnerships. They're a subsidiary of the Department of Health and Social Care, so actually they're a public body. They are the people that the head leasee for the 30 years of the contract. And if I'm speaking candidly, your view of them potentially going, well, we've got a contract, you know, we're owed the money is absolutely right. And outside of that contract, we have very little levers. What I'm starting to do now, and I know that other conversations are starting elsewhere around the country, is that those leases come to an end in 7 years' time. That seems a long way away, but it's absolutely not, and we'll need to make a decision. Actually, the NHS will need to make a decision on the future of those buildings probably in 3 or 4 years, which means they've got to be maximum utilised. There are currently 2 options. We either just hand the 4 buildings back to the landlords and the investors, or the NHS purchases them. What I'd like to do, and actually the legislation doesn't allow it at the moment, but the current government is looking at this, is allowing legislation to increase the lease. So actually you lease the buildings again for another 20 years. What I want to do is have a conversation with CHP, which is around whether the NHS purchases it back or we increase the lease. I want to renegotiate the existing 7 years of the current lease as well, so that they get more money in the long term, but as a renegotiated level at the moment. Is that falling on deaf ears at the moment? It is a bit, but I'm fighting a cause, and I think I'm starting to get there because I actually sit on the Medway Liftco board as the NHS director as well. So I think I'm starting to get a bit of traction in terms of people hearing that. But it is really difficult at the moment because at the end of the day, we've got contractual terms and conditions. In terms of working with the voluntary sector and in terms of ideas as to around about how we might encourage more people within the voluntary sector, I would welcome a discussion with actual local councillors and how we do that. We would look at, if somebody wanted to use Rainham Healthy Living Centre, particularly for health and care purposes, then I think we would look favourably on that, but we would need to understand the terms and conditions. It wouldn't be we're not looking at opening a huge market event and actually saying swamp them, because we need to be able to make sure that we don't create a precedent with the existing tenants as well. So there is a fine balance in making sure that you don't give away the space, and then the GPs within those healthy living centres go, well, if you're giving the space away to them, then why aren't you giving it away to us? So there is a balance, but there's definitely work we can do, particularly with the voluntary sector, that can offset the cost that the ICB is currently paying in order to use that space.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. I welcome a conversation. I'm sure Councillor Anang and Councillor Springwood as well. If we could have that, I'll get my team to get in touch and we can set some time up. That'd be good. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Med-Eze.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this reeks of like contractual rigidity that you're facing, and also a lack of learning lessons from the bills in the first place, where the bill design didn't lend itself for proper optimization for the facilities. Hence, you got dead space all over the place, 30–40% across the board, which is unattractive. So there's this angle where going to the voluntary sector, come and help us now. When Rainham Living Centres had those vacant spaces for 3 or 4 years, doing nothing, so why now, is the question. Is there any way that we can aggressively look to renegotiate some of those contractual terms and conditions? Are we learning lessons for the potential Strood Healthy Living Centres so that we can start looking at the redesigning some of these models so they don't have the same challenges as the 4 that we currently have? And also, yeah, how can we reimagine the current spaces that we have, and the spaces that we don't use, maybe we move the surgeries to different parts of the building to make it look more. I know Rainham is an eyesore. When you go in that healthy living centre, that you see the vacant space, and immediately you don't even want to see your GP because it looks like it's not open, but it is. So yeah, if you can answer that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of lessons learned, We've absolutely learned the lessons because the James Williams Healthy Living Centre, when you're able to look at the space within there, you'll see that we're maximising the space we use in there, and also it is flexible space. So it can be used, it'll be used as GP surgery, it'll be used in community, but if community want to change it in the future and we want to put diagnostics in there, or the GPs want to expand into certain areas, all of the clinical space within the James Williams Healthy Living Centre will allow for that, as you say, unlike the existing buildings, which look great, but they've got huge amounts of void space and open space inside them. There is the opportunity, whilst we've still got the big atrium, for example, in Rainham, and we're never going to really change that unless we use huge amounts of capital, there is the ability to refine and how rephase the layout of the building with small amounts of capital, and that with Community Health Partnerships, they have agreed to look at how they might use their capital to do that. So, for example, and again, I use Rainham because I've been there most recently, although I've been to all four, if we actually change the layout of where the receptions are, I don't mean the front reception, but the receptions on each of the floors, which are huge, and actually make them into more clinical space and more usable space, we'll probably get people willing to, well, I'd like to think that we will be able to encourage people to use them more often and actually use it as flexible space.
Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of those real layman questions, but it really builds on what Councillor over here said around different parts of the NHS using this space. Because before I became a councillor and a member of HASC, I genuinely thought if you had an NHS lanyard, you all worked in the same system. And you've very graciously and kindly taught us the complexity of the reality. But the reality is that I've still got residents with young people in need having to drive to Maidstone. I've still got residents, we've heard today about CCAM moving to more digital care. We've heard about the massive amount of pressure of things in our emergency care that could be treated in different ways, and we've got space that isn't being used. And I'm asking I know it's a really similar question to Councillor Perfect's, but I don't know how we, as HASC or as ward councillors, can start to see a more joined up approach where people locally, Lordswood is our local, I'm in Wayfield and Weedswood. I've been really fortunate to live in Lordswood from the moment I got married. It's been where I've had my children, where my teenagers have grown up. We're really, really lucky. How do we make that a better space? And how can HASC, it's really advice that might not be appropriate, but how can HASC, how can ward councillors work with you to do that better for our residents? Is that okay? Thank you.
That's a jolly good question, and I'm not sure I really know the answer to that, so fantastic question. I think it's about us having the open dialogue and the open discussion with actually the other service providers as well about what the art of the possible is. I think that in the past, we've not looked at Medway Foundation Trust, and we've not approached Medway Foundation Trust, for example, using those facilities, because we've seen them purely as Councillor Van Dijk said, using them as healthy living centres, so actually trying to get inequalities in there and diabetes clinics and so on and so forth. But we've looked at it more as a community primary care facility rather than a wider NHS facility. And you're right, we're all one NHS, so why is it so complicated? It is. We're now my view is I'm on a journey in terms of trying to get Medway, the services at Medway Foundation Trust, the outpatient services, the diagnostic services, don't always need to be in Medway Maritime, and actually lots of people would find it easier. I used to live in Lordswood as well. So, having it on the doorstep in Lordswood, having outpatient facilities on the doorstep in Rochester and so on. So we're starting those conversations. Why didn't we do that earlier? Good question. I won't say for reasons unknown, because I think because I do know the reason. I think we just didn't think about it, and I don't think we were focusing on primary and community care rather than thinking totality of care. But we're thinking differently now.
I think it's fair to say as well, a lot more people would use the Healthy Living Centre if it didn't have the bind of them charges and the costs.
It's the charges it's the cost, unfortunately. The contractual charges are the issue. It's difficult to swallow. And it's based on decisions that were made in 2002 and 2002, so even before the CCGs. We're living with that at the moment, but The lessons learned are from James Williams in terms of let's try and do it ourselves rather than use a third party. And the lessons learned are in terms of how do we then actually try and have break clauses within leases as well, rather than just have a 30-year lease where there's no break clause.
Councillor Mandarakis.
So obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of the kind of contracts and things within them, but I've said in here before, I'm a trustee of the Sunlight Centre, and actually in all but name, that is a healthy living centre, but it is run by the community. Well, it's run by a charity, but in direct collaboration with the community. And I wonder if you'd kind of explored that side of it, of really allowing people to kind of design what they want these healthy living spaces to look like. What do they want in there? How can a different organising body really make something that that community wants? Because they're different, they need different things.
That's a really good question, and actually I've been talking with Martin Riley and others at Medway and Swale Health and Care Partnership, and Martin also chairs the Strategic Estates Forum in Medway and Swale Health and Care Partnership, about how we might do that and how we might actually look at different ownership arrangements and actually getting the community more involved in how we might design things in the future. So that's absolutely, you're on the money in terms of a conversation that's happened within the last few weeks.
Vice Chair, please.
I move that the committee notes update and current progress.
Is that seconded? Seconded? Agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike. We're now moving. Am I moving to Councillor Perfect or Councillor Nain to do this members' item? Councillor Nain, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is on behalf of the Rainham councillors, Councillor Perfect, Councillor Spring, and myself. And it is with regard to pharmacy provision in Rainham. We wish to raise concerns about the significant reduction in pharmacy provision in Rainham, which has gone from having 3 pharmacies to now just only 1, with no additional provision plan. Pharmacies play a vital role in community health care, offering accessible and immediate support for residents, particularly through the Pharmacy First scheme, which helps ease pressure on GPs and A&E services. They are essentially for prescription services, medication advice, vaccination, and minor illness consultation, providing a crucial frontline services for those who may struggle to access other forms of health care. The loss of 2 pharmacies in Rainham has left residents with reduced access to essential health services, because in Rainham North, the population is 9,206, and we also have, over 50 years, we have 3,796 people. So this reduction has really reduced access to essential health services, and we are deeply concerned that there are no plans to replace or expand provision to meet local needs. Given the significant issues in Rainham with access to GPs and healthy living centres, this is exacerbated even further. This is particularly worrying for elderly residents, those with long-term conditions, and those without ease to transport options, who now faces longer waiting times and potential delays in accessing medication and advice. Given this concern, we would like to ask the ICB the following questions. Why does Rainham now have only 1 pharmacy with no additional provision plan, despite the growing population and demand? Will the upcoming pharmacy need assessment address the gaps in provision? And if so, when can we expect action? What impact has the closure of the 2 pharmacies and the failure to allow replacement provision had on residents' ability to access Pharmacy First service and other essential health care support? The residents in Rainham deserve accessible, dependable, and high-quality services. The current situation is not sustainable, and we urge agent action to review, assess, and address the pharmacy shortfall to ensure our community does not continue to be disadvantaged. We look forward to clear answers and a firm commitment to improving pharmacy provision in Rainham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Naing. And just to remind members, we you know, I know there has been some complaints about pharmacy provision. I'm just going to ask members to refrain from actually mentioning the name of the pharmacy with the complaints, if that's okay. But we can just class it as the pharmacy in Rainham. Would you like to comment to it?
Yeah, so thank you for the questions. I'll take the paper as read in terms of the responses that we've given, but there are just a couple of things I just wanted to really kind of highlight. So I think firstly just recognising the importance of community pharmacy, particularly as you mentioned for local residents, how it supports the wider healthcare system and how it supports the needs of patients within our communities. And pharmacies are well located in local communities, so I understand they're a really important part of that service. We've obviously been here before to a Scrutiny Committee to talk about pharmacy services, and I've been to the Health and Wellbeing Board as well to talk about pharmacy services. So I think it's just to recognise, obviously, we know the importance, particularly as they are now delivering more clinical services such as Pharmacy First, blood pressure monitoring and oral contraception as well for our residents. The second thing I wanted to raise, and it's just a major one really, was the pharmaceutical needs assessment and the importance of that piece of work. So we've kind of given the response in there in terms of what the responsibility in terms of the Health and Wellbeing Board is around that pharmaceutical needs assessment. If there are unmet needs that need to be addressed, then obviously we will be looking as an ICB to see what we need to do to address that gap. So I think we need to wait for the responses that come through from the pharmaceutical needs assessment. There is an opportunity this year because we actually now can consider these other clinical services as part of that needs assessment. And I think it's really important saying that this is needs-based. So actually when we want to have a look at this, what is it that we need in terms of supporting the population? Is it around more pharmaceutical services? But there could be other needs that are identified as well that we might need to support. When a pharmacy closes, the Health and Wellbeing Board can also make, so whilst we're doing this and it's for 3 years, the Health and Wellbeing Board can make a supplementary statement, say actually this is an impact to our population. And again, as an ICB, we would be required to respond in terms of what we provide and look to provide additional provision if it's required for that population. I'll stop for any other questions.
Councillor Perfect.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the response and the comprehensive answers to the questions that Councillor Anang, Spring and I have raised. I'm just interested, I mean, and Councillor MacDonald referenced, obviously we have got a pharmacy in Rainham which is providing a certain level of service, and obviously we've got the, as you referenced it, the other pharmacies that are located within a sort of 3 to 5 mile radius within Gillingham, but also within neighbouring Wigmore, Parkwood and Hempstead. But I'd just like to note that, sorry, the community in Rainham in particular, that precinct where this is located, where this current pharmacy is located, but where the others have historically been located, have been accessed really by the community much more on a local level than those that would be more mobile and would access pharmacies in Hempstead Valley Shopping Centre or within Parkwood, which is effectively where we're talking about. And I know when we've been out talking with residents about some of their concerns on this and also noting comments that we see online and through our inboxes, etc., particularly for our elderly residents, having access to pharmacy provision quickly and accessibly on foot in the precinct is really important. And I think that's the point that I think has been missed historically, in that obviously, you know, a large, I won't name them, but a large pharmacy, you know, national pharmaceutical chain obviously left the precinct, and obviously we lost the second one then as well, and obviously that provision was also pretty advanced actually. The provision that was provided by particularly one of the national providers was very, you know, online accessible, very dynamic, very speedy. And I think the service that, without trying to get into specifics of pharmacies, the service that's now being provided isn't at that level or that pace. It's the feedback, the residents' feedback. And I'm just a little bit concerned that the pharmaceutical needs assessment might not pick up on that. So I'd appreciate if you had any thoughts in terms of how we ensure that that sort of specific element of it's fed in. And then just my other point was just around just how residents, obviously I've noted all the comments in here, but how we can get residents to feed into the P&A with some of this, this sort of content and thoughts more specifically, and it really sort of what your resident engagement plan might be moving forward around some of this, and also just about how dynamic the situation is moving forward. Obviously we've got one pharmacy left. If that pharmacy were to close, obviously I appreciate then the situation might then change again, and obviously I think it would be good for us and the committee to have an understanding of exactly how that works. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. So I'll take the first one, and then I think, Teresa, did you want to take the second one in terms of the approach around the pharmaceutical needs assessment? Because I know that's the piece of work that has been led through public health. So if there are specific concerns in terms of the current pharmacy providers and the service that they're providing, then we need to know about that. So obviously there are ways that patients can raise their concerns, and then we would need to be able to respond to those. Also, the General Pharmaceutical Council are the regulator for community pharmacy. So again, if there are clinical concerns in terms of any of the aspects of the service provision that you're getting from any pharmacy, whether they would be responsible for addressing those. If you've got specific concerns with an individual pharmacy, I'm happy to pick them up outside of today's meeting, and then we can have a look at in terms of what we might need to do in terms of giving some more assurance in terms of what they're providing. Teresa, did you want to come back in on the pharmaceutical needs assessment?
Yeah, just very briefly, so thank you. Just wanted to say, so we've started the process for the pharmaceutical needs assessment as detailed in the paper, but it's just to assure the committee that residents have been involved in this from the get-go. We had 3 surveys that were run last year, and these were run with for residents and for contractors to take part in those surveys. And additionally, this year, when we have the drafted document in place, we will have a public consultation that will run for 60 days, and that will start in April. I'd also like to point out that the draft document, as part of the governance for it, will be coming to HASC in August, so there will be opportunity for all committee members to review it and scrutinise it. A steering group has been stood up by the Health and Wellbeing Board to oversee this work, led by the Director of Public Health. But I'd like to mention that Health Watch colleagues are very much on that steering group. And in terms of the communication plan that we've had for this P&A, they have been very much involved in it in terms of its development. So, excuse my voice, colleagues. I guess the point I just wanted to assure everybody of was, first of all, our residents have been very involved in this piece of work, and they will continue to be involved in it, and this committee will have a chance to scrutinise the document later on in the year.
Thank you, Teresa. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you know, I'm a guest on this committee, and I haven't had the opportunity to scrutinise the report until I got here tonight. But living in Rainham all of my life, I feel I've had to make a comment. Some of your answers I find are totally unacceptable. You're saying that we're not allowed to mention anybody's names. One of the pharmacies in Rainham is having leasing problems, and has had their doors closed on at least 2 occasions. You also mentioned Fens in Parkway Green, which is an excellent pharmacy, but it's hardly within walking distance of Rainham. It's nearly a mile away. And the same goes to the Phoenix pharmacy. In fact, there are 8 pharmacies within 2 miles of Rainham High Street, but none of them are less than 3/4 of a mile away, which is okay if you've got a car, because and you say they can be. You blandly say, oh, you can use public transport. Well, yes, you can sometimes. If you're in a wheelchair, that's exceptionally difficult. And as the councillor says, there needs to be within walking distance. They need to be in the hub, in the centre. Now, I know there are some independent pharmacies who are operating on a very fragile business plan, and and some of the big pharmacies aren't there at all. I mean, Boots has moved out, Lloyd's has been taken over, and it seems to me that the reasons they are closing needs to be addressed. The fact that the NHS funding has been reduced by 40%, the proportion of the NHS budget has been going to pharmacies has been reduced from 2.4% to 1.6%. And the cost of drugs is increased, but the amount the government is providing has not kept pace. Yet this is coupled with the fact that the government wants to put more services in the hands of pharmacists to ease the pressure on GPs. So, I mean, I would like you and the chair of the committee to, especially the chair of the committee, he can lobby his former ward colleague to actually try and get more funds available to the pharmacies, especially in Rainham, but pharmacies generally, you know, because what's happening in Rainham is being replicated all over the country, and they are important aspects of our life, of our health and well-being, and I think that there must be ways of encouraging pharmacists back into Rainham, making premises available, maybe in the Healthy Living Centre, I don't know, that would possibly be an ideal place for a pharmacy, you know, with surrounded by doctors' surgeries and the like. But, you know, I think the situation at the moment is absolutely disgraceful. You know, we've got elderly and vulnerable people in Rainham who just cannot access the local pharmacies. In fact, I mean, I'm a chair of a small charity that provides transport to and from medical appointments, where we are more often than not these days transporting patients or clients to and from pharmacies because they can't get there any other way. And I mean, yes, the charities, and we're not the only charity that does this, but it's a lifeline to people. And we shouldn't really rely on these. This should be an extra, but it's turning out to be the norm. And I really think that there's by talking to the government, talking to the health service, and find out why this is being neglected. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Can I just, so before you come back, I just wanted a point of clarity. You're right, Councillor Kemp. It isn't that you can't attract pharmacies into Rainham. You're not accepting pharmacies into Rainham, are you?
So we would respond, so again, it's the needs assessment decides in terms of what we need in terms of community pharmacy provision. If a pharmacy closes, then again, a supplementary statement would need to be provided by the Health and Wellbeing Board, and then we would then go to market in terms of for pharmacists to operate in whichever area, whether that's Rainham or another area.
So at this stage, even though 2 pharmacies have closed, any pharmacies applying to want to be in Rainham, they're not being accepted, are they?
No, so they can if they can, so they can make a case based on unforeseen benefits, and we can consider that. So there's 2 aspects to it. One is the Health and Wellbeing Board can make a supplementary statement that says there's a need in Rainham, and then we will respond to that. Or a pharmacy can approach us and say there's
I think
benefits.
thanks. We're touching on the Health and Wellbeing Board in the end. I'm just saying, pharmacies have attempted to be in Rainham and to replace where a pharmacy has been, and they're not being accepted at this moment in time.
Not that I'm aware of, but if you've got details,
take that offline then.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know that's the case. Okay.
Can I come back, Dan, if I may? We've got a population of Rainham which is 30,000 plus and increasing. It wasn't so many years ago. We had 4 pharmacies in Rainham. You know, albeit small pharmacies, but we had 4 of them. And it wasn't too long ago they had 3 big ones. We had 2 Lloyd's and the Boots. And you know, so how can anybody say that we don't need these pharmacies if we've got an increase in population, yet you're restricting it to 1 pharmacy, and you're putting more and more services on that 1 pharmacist? It seems to me a ridiculous business case. Absolutely ridiculous. Disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
So do you want to just respond briefly, and then I think I'm going to come to an action that we'll take from this.
Yeah, I was going to say, so again, there hasn't been a supplementary statement by the Health and Wellbeing Board to say that there's the need there. So again, that's where we would respond. If there's a supplementary statement from the Health and Wellbeing Board, then we will look to commission additional pharmacy provision.
Thank you so much, Councillor Nang. I think from my point of view, again, it's the unanswered questions. I do know, you know, when we say in the report about the P&A in 2022, no gaps identified, wouldn't be, because there was more pharmacies. So, of course, there'd be no gaps. And now we've lost, and I've got to say about public health as well, they need to be brought in on this because it's crazy. You know, of course there's gaps. There was no gaps in 2022 when we had, I can say, because they're not complaining about Boots and Lloyds and all of them there. They've gone. You know, and I'm delighted that Gillingham got 17 pharmacies. It's wonderful I can go to every corner and find a pharmacy. You can't in Rainham. And you know, we want health, again, like you were just saying, we want to be able to access, I know you're into it, you want to be able to walk into a pharmacy and take the pressure off our GPs, take the pressure off our hospital. And there's people there that can't get down to Tesco's extra down the road. We want people to go local, and the carbon aspect and everything else. So what I'm going to suggest is, and I also want to remind members that we scrutinise the Health and Wellbeing Board. So what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to speak to Councillor Murray. We'll get a table, so I know you'll come, you know, but I'm going to get a table so the Health and Wellbeing Board chair is there. And then we're going to ask the question about that statement of concern. Because I do know members are going to be going out speaking to their residents themselves, and they're talking about petitions and other stuff. I think if we want a letter of whatever, what letter of concern is it?
A supplementary statement.
Thank you, just for Terry. I bet Terry's got that anyway. You did. But let's have that discussion before you want to go to further action. Let's get that round table, and then and decide what we're doing then, because I think lots of residents, and I know Health Watch there, but lots of residents Rainham would not even know about Health Watch, won't come to you, and I feel they'd be coming to you guys, and again, on Facebook and everywhere, and on my emails, we're full of it, aren't we, about the pharmacy being closed all the time, which it is at the moment, on and off. Councillor Perfect, to finish?
Sorry, I just wanted to I just want to say thank you, Sir, and thank you, Chair, for your pragmatic approach on this, and thank you to Teresa as well for that information. I think it's just really important that we communicate that clearly to residents. And I think the round table will be a good opportunity to bring everybody together from the executive of this council, ourselves, ward members, and yourselves, to bring that together. So thank you very much, and fully support that. Thank you, Chair.
And just for clarity, before I go to Councillor Kemp, you'll be pleased to know that my former colleague, the MP for Gillingham Rainham, is very involved in pharmacy. She's visited pharmacies with me as well, as has all the MPs, but as Sook knows, they are pretty involved. I want you to know that she is very, very keen on good pharmacy provision in Gillingham and Rainham. So, and I think that was just brought up in the Rainham round table, as well as a round table seems to be the word now. I don't have to stop that. A lot of round tables, but I know that there is, just for clarity, I know that she is very keen on good pharmacy provision. So, Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the comments from the ICB in response to the members' item. The Chair will convene a roundtable separately outside of this committee to discuss further the lack of pharmacy provision in Rainham.
Perfect. Is that seconded? Thank you. And is that agreed, members? Thank you very much. And thank you so much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your time tonight. And that was a long one, but thank you. Thanks very much for your time. I forgot the next item. We're going to our lovely item 12 now, aren't we? Capital and revenue, and you're taking them together, aren't you? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, in the interest of time, I won't do a lengthy introduction, but I'll just happy to take questions on items 12 and 13, if there are any.
Any questions, members? No questions. Oh, question.
I just want to commend your patience, Dave, in sitting and waiting through all of that for this final item. So well done.
You had a load of people looking at you then, Vice Chair, thinking, what are you doing with a question? Okay, Vice Chair.
Okay, so I'll read the recommendations from 12, 13 and 14 together. No, just in 12 and 13, yeah. I move that the committee notes the results of the third round of capital budget monitoring for 2024-25. notes the results of the third round of revenue budget monitoring for 2024-25, notes that Cabinet instructed the corporate management team to implement urgent actions to bring expenditure back within the budget agreed by the full council.
Is that seconded, members? Seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dave. Leanne, am I going to you on item 14?
Thank you, Chair. Performance monitoring report, strategic risk summary for Q3. Given the lateness of the hour, Chair, I am proposing we just take any questions. There's quite a lot of detail in there that members would have had the opportunity to read. Thank you.
Any questions, members? No questions. Such a thorough report. Thank you, Leanne. Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the report.
Seconded? Seconded. Agreed, members? Agreed. Okay. Item.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of updates. So during that discussion earlier, I noticed Teresa mentioned the P&A in August, which is not on the work programme, so I would suggest we add that in, if that's okay with everybody. And then I just wanted to do a reminder of the ICB development session that we have this time next week in this room. So that's next Thursday, just a reminder for everybody. And for those that haven't seen my email, we are cancelling the visit to Lordswood Healthy Living Centre tomorrow. The first session did go ahead, although there was only one councillor that made that in the end. And we only had 3 for tomorrow. So we, in consultation with the chairperson, have decided to cancel tomorrow and rearrange for a day when hopefully there's a bit more uptake.
Thank you, Terry. Just two little moans from me as well. You know, we are doing some really good training, some development training. I am trying to do it in the evenings because I know everyone does work, so I'm trying to make sure we do it in the evening period. The reason we cancelled tomorrow is it isn't great when members don't attend. So the member that did go was Councillor Wildy, and it was his own surgery, so he knew everyone there anyway. So well done, Councillor Wildy, for going. But can I please remind everyone to try and make the effort, especially with the ICB next week. We've got to, you know, if we're going to get them to come along and give us these open, transparent sessions, it's good for us to attend. So it'd be great. And just secondly, for me, you do know, for those that are not normally here present, I normally try and finish by 9:30. And I can assure you the lateness of the hour isn't what it used to be. It used to be gone midnight at times here, so it's not as bad. Any questions, members, for Terry? Okay, Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the report and agrees the work programme as set out at Appendix 1 to the report, subject to accepting the proposed changes outlined in italic text on Appendix 1.
Seconded, member? Seconded? Agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you very much, members, and good evening. Thank you. Thanks for your time.